What if the world we perceive is only a fraction of what truly exists? What if our senses, instead of revealing truth, actually limit our access to deeper realities? And what if, by exploring altered states of consciousness, we could see beyond the veil and unlock hidden dimensions of experience, insight, and meaning? These aren't just abstract concepts. They touch on the core of what it means to be human, to seek understanding, connection, and a sense of purpose in a world that often feels fragmented and meaningless. Imagine gaining access to a deeper wellspring of wisdom, intuition, and creativity, a source of guidance that can illuminate your path and transform your life from the inside out. For millennia, humanity has sought to understand this phenomenon of mystical perception, this sense of seeing beyond the limitations of ordinary consciousness. Across cultures and throughout history, individuals have reported experiences of profound connection, altered states of awareness, and encounters with realms beyond the everyday. From the shamanic traditions of indigenous cultures to the contemplative practices of Eastern religions, methods for inducing altered states of consciousness have been central to the human quest for meaning and transcendence. These practices often involve rituals, meditation, or the use of psychoactive substances, all aimed at accessing deeper levels of awareness and connecting with the transpersonal realm. Swiss psychiatrist and psychologist Carl Jung offered a powerful framework for understanding these experiences through his concept of the collective unconscious and its archetypes. Jung saw archetypes as universal patterns of behavior, imagery, and symbolism that reside in the collective unconscious, shaping our thoughts, feelings, and experiences. These archetypes, such as the anima animus, the shadow, and the self, can manifest in mystical experiences as symbolic figures, motifs, and narratives, providing a key to interpreting their psychological meaning. Jung writes, "The collective unconscious contains the whole spiritual heritage of mankind's evolution, born anew in the brain structure of every individual." However, modern science, with its emphasis on empirical evidence and rational explanation, has largely dismissed these experiences as subjective illusions, neurological anomalies, or even signs of mental illness. The pathologizing of anomalous states by some mainstream psychology creates a barrier to understanding the potential psychological benefits and transformative power of mystical perception. The scientific emphasis on objectivity often clashes with the subjective, experiential nature of mystical states, leading to a disconnect between the scientific worldview and the individual's lived experience. This brings us to the central question facing us today. How can we understand and integrate mystical experiences within a psychological framework, extracting meaning and promoting personal growth without falling prey to delusion or misinterpretation? How can we reframe seeing beyond the veil as enhanced intuition and heightened sensitivity to symbolic meaning, rather than literal supernatural perception? In this video, we'll delve into Jungian concepts like archetypes and the collective unconscious, explore different methods for inducing altered states of consciousness, discuss the importance of symbolic interpretation, and examine the potential benefits and pitfalls of mystical experiences. By exploring these topics, you'll gain valuable insights into your own inner world, learn to make meaning of altered states of consciousness, and integrate these experiences into your journey of individuation. So, let's begin our exploration of the psychology of mystical perception and unlock the hidden potential within our own minds. Let's begin by reframing our understanding of mystical perception. Instead of viewing it as something inherently supernatural or otherworldly, consider it as a shift in conscious awareness, a unique state of being characterized by heightened sensory input, altered perceptions of space and time, and intensely felt emotional experiences. Have you ever been so engrossed in a task that you lost all sense of time, feeling a profound sense of flow and connection to the activity itself? Or perhaps you've experienced an aha moment of insight, where a complex problem suddenly resolves itself in your mind with crystal clarity. These experiences, while not traditionally labeled as mystical, exist on a spectrum with more profound altered states, suggesting that mystical perception is not an all-or-nothing phenomenon, but rather a potential inherent in human consciousness. These experiences, whether subtle or profound, can be understood as primarily psychological, rooted in the subjective interpretation of internal and external stimuli. What does this mean? Consider two different perspectives. On one hand, a purely materialistic view might suggest that these states are merely the result of neurological activity in the brain, chemical reactions, firing in specific patterns. While this is undoubtedly part of the picture, a Jungian perspective allows for the influence of deeper, unconscious forces, suggesting that mystical experiences may tap into a realm beyond the purely physical. The brain, in this view, acts as a receiver, tuning into frequencies and patterns that originate from a source beyond itself. But is this a purely subjective phenomenon, or does it point to a deeper reality? It's important to remember the sheer commonality of such experiences. Surveys and studies consistently indicate that a significant portion of the general population reports having had mystical or spiritual experiences at some point in their lives. These experiences often share common themes: feelings of unity with the universe, encounters with divine figures, or profound insights into the nature of reality. Why do so many people, across different cultures and backgrounds, report similar experiences? This begs the question: what are the psychological roots of mystical perception, and what can these experiences tell us about the human psyche? To understand this further, we turn to Carl Jung's concept of archetypes as universal, primordial images and patterns of behavior residing in the collective unconscious. But what exactly is the collective unconscious? Jung posited that it is a shared reservoir of human experience, inherited across generations and cultures. It is not a collection of personal memories, but rather a deeper layer of the unconscious that contains the fundamental building blocks of the human psyche. Jung writes, "My thesis, then, is as follows. In addition to our immediate consciousness, which is of a thoroughly personal nature and which we believe to be the only empirical psyche, there exists a second psychic system of a collective, universal, and impersonal nature which is identical in all individuals. These archetypes, residing within the collective unconscious, can manifest in mystical experiences, shaping the symbols, motifs, and narratives that arise. Think of them as fundamental patterns of human experience, pre-existing structures that influence our perceptions and behaviors. In altered states of consciousness, these archetypes can become activated, leading to symbolic visions, encounters with archetypal figures, and feelings of connection to something larger than oneself. But how do these archetypes actually shape our mystical experiences? Marie-Louise von Franz, a close collaborator of Jung, further elaborated on the role of archetypes in understanding the often bizarre imagery and symbolic language of mystical states. She argued that these archetypes provide a framework for interpreting the unconscious content that emerges during these experiences. Von Franz writes, "The archetypes are the images and emotions connected with the typical situations of life. They are the eternal forms behind all psychic life. Understanding the archetypes, therefore, can provide a roadmap for navigating the complex and often confusing landscape of mystical perception. Now, let's consider some specific archetypes and how they might manifest in mystical experiences. First, there's the anima-animus archetype, representing the unconscious feminine side of a man, anima, and the unconscious masculine side of a woman, animus. How might this manifest in a mystical experience? Imagine a man encountering a wise and compassionate female figure in a vision, who guides him towards a deeper understanding of his own emotions and intuition. Or picture a woman encountering a strong and assertive male figure, who empowers her to take action and assert her own will in the world. These figures, representing the anima and animus, can act as guides, leading individuals to the source of creation, to the realm of the self. Then there's the shadow archetype, representing the repressed or disowned aspects of the personality. This is often the most challenging archetype to confront, as it embodies the qualities we dislike or fear within ourselves. How might the shadow appear in a mystical experience? Perhaps as a dark or threatening figure in a vision, prompting confrontation and integration. Facing the shadow is a necessary stage in psychological growth, as it allows us to reclaim the energy and potential that has been repressed. But what happens if we fail to integrate our shadow? Finally, we have the self archetype, representing the center of wholeness and the ultimate goal of individuation. This archetype is often symbolized by mandalas, those intricate circular patterns that represent the totality of the psyche, or by divine figures embodying wisdom and compassion. How might the self-archetype manifest? Perhaps as a feeling of unity, completeness, and profound connection to the universe. It might appear as a vision of pure light or a sense of merging with the divine. The experience of the self is the ultimate aim of mystical exploration. Each of these archetypes, the anima, animus, the shadow, and the self, offers unique opportunities for psychological healing and growth during mystical experiences. Confronting the shadow allows us to integrate repressed aspects of our personality. Engaging with the anima animus allows us to connect with our inner feminine or masculine qualities, and connecting with the self allows us to experience a sense of wholeness and meaning. In summary, archetypes, as elements of the collective unconscious, are psychological structures that are awakened during mystical experiences. They are not merely abstract concepts, but rather living forces that shape our perceptions, emotions, and behaviors. By understanding these archetypes, we can provide a framework for interpreting mystical experiences and extracting psychological meaning. By recognizing the symbolic language of the unconscious, individuals can gain insights into their own inner world, integrate repressed aspects of their personality, and move toward greater wholeness. This brings us to the transformative potential of these experiences in the individuation process, the journey toward greater self-awareness and connection to the transpersonal realm. Confronting and integrating the shadow, integrating the anima animus, and connecting to the self are all crucial steps in this journey, often facilitated by mystical experiences. Having examined the archetypal landscape of mystical perception, let's now turn to the question of how these states of consciousness can be accessed and explored. What are the methods, both ancient and modern, that allow us to see beyond the veil and tap into the deeper realms of the psyche? This is where we will turn next. Is the everyday state of awareness truly the only legitimate way to experience reality? Or could it be that what we consider normal consciousness is simply one setting on a dial, a limited range of perception that filters out far more than it lets in? What if altering that setting, exploring different states of consciousness, could offer access to realms of insight and understanding that remain hidden in our ordinary waking hours? These altered states, far from being signs of pathology or mental instability, can be viewed as natural variations in human experience, potential gateways to mystical perception, and profound connection with the unconscious mind. Think of them as temporary suspensions of the filters that normally constrain our perception, offering glimpses into the vast landscape of the psyche. Exploring these states with the right preparation and intention is not about escaping reality, but about expanding our awareness of it, accessing deeper levels of insight, and ultimately enriching our understanding of ourselves. But what are these filters we're talking about, and how do altered states allow us to bypass them? To understand this, let's explore the various methods for inducing altered states of consciousness, each offering a unique pathway to these expanded realms of perception. Broadly, we can categorize these methods into three main groups: internally generated methods, externally induced methods, and ritualistic practices. Each category operates through different psychological mechanisms, affecting the mind and body in distinct ways. Which path is the most effective depends, of course, on the individual and their goals, but understanding the underlying principles of each method is key to safe and productive exploration. Internally generated methods rely on harnessing the power of the mind and body to shift one's state of consciousness. Meditation, perhaps the most well-known example, quiets the monkey mind, that constant stream of thoughts and worries, and allows access to deeper levels of awareness. It's like training the mind to become still and receptive, like a calm lake that reflects the sky with perfect clarity. Mindfulness practices, which involve paying attention to the present moment without judgment, can also induce altered states by shifting our focus from conceptual thinking to direct sensory experience. Breathwork techniques, involving specific patterns of inhalation and exhalation, can alter brain chemistry and nervous system activity, leading to altered states of relaxation, euphoria, or even visionary experiences. But what happens when we remove external stimuli altogether? Externally induced methods, on the other hand, involve manipulating the external environment to alter one's state of consciousness. Sensory deprivation, for example, reduces external stimulation to a minimum, amplifying internal sensations and often leading to vivid imagery and altered perceptions of space and time. Think of it as turning down the volume on the outside world to better hear the whispers of the inner world. Hypnosis, another externally induced method, uses suggestion and focused attention to bypass the critical mind and access the subconscious, opening the door to altered perceptions, memories, and behaviors. And then, of course, there are psychoactive substances, which alter brain chemistry and disrupt normal patterns of thought, leading to a wide range of altered states, from heightened sensory awareness to profound mystical experiences. But is it always necessary to use extreme measures like sensory deprivation or psychoactive substances to access altered states? Ritualistic practices represent a third category, drawing on the power of collective energy, symbolic action, and rhythmic stimulation to induce altered states. Shamanic drumming, chanting, and dance, for example, have been used for centuries to induce trance states, connect with spirits, and facilitate healing within indigenous cultures. These practices often involve repetitive movements and sounds that entrain the brainwaves, leading to altered states of consciousness and a heightened sense of connection to the community and the spirit world. Religious traditions, such as Sufi whirling and ecstatic dance, provide similar examples of using ritual and movement to transcend ordinary consciousness. The key to all of these methods, however, lies in intention, expectation, and setting. Why are these factors so crucial in shaping the experience? A positive mindset, a supportive environment, and a clear intention can significantly enhance the transformative potential of altered state experiences, regardless of the method used. Approaching these experiences with curiosity, openness, and a willingness to learn can create a safe and productive space for exploration. Conversely, fear, anxiety, or a lack of preparation can lead to negative or overwhelming experiences. The setting, too, plays a crucial role. A quiet, comfortable, and safe environment can promote relaxation and allow for deeper exploration, while a noisy, chaotic, or threatening environment can trigger anxiety and hinder the experience. Ultimately, the most effective approach involves a combination of the right method, the right mindset, and the right setting, tailored to the individual's unique needs and goals. Now, let's turn our attention to historical and cultural examples of how different societies have utilized altered states of consciousness for spiritual, healing, and transformative purposes. Consider the shamanic traditions in indigenous cultures around the world. Shamans, acting as intermediaries between the human and spirit worlds, routinely enter altered states of consciousness to communicate with spirits, heal the sick, and maintain balance within the community. This can be illustrated by the practices of the Yanomami tribe of the Amazon, who utilize ebene snuff, a psychoactive preparation from the Varola tree, to enter altered states for healing and divination purposes. Mircea-Eliade writes of shamanic practices, archaic and traditional societies, recognize the value of ecstatic experiences. But are altered states confined to indigenous populations? Consider, too, the use of psychedelics in psychotherapy and spiritual retreats in more recent times. In the 1950s and 60s, researchers explored the potential of LSD and psilocybin to treat a variety of psychological conditions, from anxiety and depression to addiction. While this research was largely shut down due to legal restrictions, there has been a resurgence of interest in recent years, with studies showing promising results for the use of psychedelics in treating PTSD and other mental health issues. However, these are not the only ways that religious altered states are used and depicted. Even biblical imagery of angels, demons, and divine encounters can be understood through the lens of altered states of consciousness. What if the visions described by prophets and saints were, in fact, experiences occurring within altered states, shaped by cultural and religious beliefs? The archetype of the angel, for example, might represent the emergence of benevolent and guiding forces from the unconscious, while the archetype of the demon might represent the confrontation with repressed and feared aspects of the self. The divine encounters, in turn, could symbolize moments of profound connection with the self, the center of wholeness and meaning within the psyche. But is this simply a reductionistic interpretation of religious experience? In essence, altered states of consciousness offer a window into the unconscious mind, allowing access to archetypal energies and symbolic imagery that can profoundly impact our lives. By exploring these states with intention and awareness, we can gain insights into our own inner world, integrate repressed aspects of our personality, and move toward greater wholeness and self-realization. However, altered states are tools or pathways, not ends in themselves. The real work lies in integrating the insights and experiences gained into our daily lives, using journaling, therapy, or other forms of self-reflection to process and integrate these experiences. But what happens when these experiences are not properly integrated or understood? While altered states can be powerful tools for self-discovery, it's crucial to approach them with caution, awareness, and a clear understanding of the potential risks involved. For as we'll discuss next, the misinterpretation of mystical experiences can lead to significant psychological pitfalls. Is seeing beyond the veil merely a fanciful expression, or does it point to a deeper capacity within us to perceive reality through a different lens? What if mystical experiences, rather than being irrational flights of fancy, are actually communicating profound truths through a language we have yet to fully understand, the language of symbols? To grasp this perspective, we must shift our focus from the literal to the symbolic, recognizing that mystical encounters often bypass the rational mind and speak directly to the soul. But how can we decipher this enigmatic language, and what makes it so essential to understanding the mystical realm? One of the most common misconceptions about mystical experiences is that they are inherently irrational or nonsensical. However, framing symbolic language as a coherent system of communication from the unconscious challenges this notion. Think of symbolic language like a dream, seemingly bizarre and disjointed on the surface, yet potentially rich with meaning upon closer examination. Just as dream analysis can unlock hidden desires, fears, and unresolved conflicts, symbolic interpretation can reveal the deeper psychological and spiritual significance of mystical encounters. But this requires us to move beyond surface-level interpretations, to delve into the layered meanings and uncover the hidden messages embedded within these experiences. The question is not whether these symbols are objectively real, but rather, what do they mean? To truly understand the language of the soul, we must first define what we mean by symbol. In Jungian psychology, symbols are not simply arbitrary signs or conventional representations, but rather representations of unconscious content, bridging the gap between the conscious and unconscious mind. A symbol can represent a complex emotion, idea, or experience that is difficult to articulate directly, acting as a vessel for meaning that transcends the limitations of language. It is the psyche's natural means of expression that bypasses ego's attempts at rationalization. What's more, a symbol can present in myriad forms: an object, a person, a place, an event, or even a feeling, each imbued with a unique significance. But where does that significance come from, and how can we hope to grasp its essence? Adding another layer, we must differentiate between personal, cultural, and universal symbols, highlighting the crucial importance of context in interpretation. A personal symbol might be specific to an individual's life experiences, holding a unique meaning that resonates only with them. For example, a childhood toy might evoke feelings of nostalgia, comfort, or even trauma, depending on the individual's personal history. A cultural symbol, on the other hand, carries shared meaning within a particular society or group. The Christian cross, for instance, represents sacrifice, redemption, and faith for Christians, while the yin-yang symbol embodies balance and harmony in Chinese culture. Universal symbols, also known as archetypes, resonate across cultures and throughout history, representing fundamental aspects of the human experience. Examples include the Great Mother, the Wise Old Man, and the Shadow, each embodying universal patterns of behavior, emotion, and thought. This layered complexity means a single symbol can hold a multitude of meanings simultaneously. A flower, for instance, can symbolize potential. If gifted by an admirer, then romantic potential. If found dried in an attic, then lost potential. If seen growing in a graveyard, then potential arising from death. Therefore, decoding these symbols requires sensitivity to nuance and context. But how do we begin to unlock these layers of meaning? Decoding the mystical requires a practical approach to symbolic interpretation, emphasizing the importance of intuition, association, and active imagination. One effective method involves a step-by-step process. First, identify the key symbols that stand out in the mystical experience. Second, brainstorm possible meanings for each symbol, drawing on personal experiences, cultural knowledge, and universal archetypes. Third, explore the personal and cultural associations connected to each symbol, allowing for a free-flowing exploration of ideas and emotions. To aid in this process, one might utilize Jung's technique of active imagination to engage with symbols and uncover their hidden messages. How does this technique work precisely? Active imagination involves entering into a dialogue with the symbol, allowing it to speak and reveal its secrets. This can be done through journaling, art-making, or even simply through focused meditation. For example, imagine encountering a snake in a dream or vision. Rather than dismissing it as a sign of evil or temptation, one might engage with the snake through active imagination, asking it questions such as, "What do you represent? What message do you have for me? What do you want me to know?" By listening to the snake's responses, one might uncover hidden aspects of their own psyche, such as repressed instincts, creative energies, or the potential for transformation. Think of it as interviewing the contents of your unconscious. But how can this approach be applied to real-life mystical experiences? Consider the case of a hypothetical individual who experiences a vision of walking through a dark forest. In this forest, they encounter a wise old man who offers them a key. Applying symbolic interpretation, we might identify the key symbols as the dark forest, the wise old man, and the key itself. The dark forest could represent a period of uncertainty, confusion, or inner turmoil in the individual's life. The wise old man could symbolize the emergence of inner wisdom, guidance, and intuition. The key, in turn, could represent the means to unlock hidden potential, overcome challenges, or gain access to a deeper understanding of oneself. By exploring these symbols in light of the individual's personal history and psychological challenges, one might uncover profound insights into their own journey of individuation. Consider Jung's Red Book, and how Jung actively engaged with the symbolic figures within his own visions to come to a better understanding of himself. The journey is not passive observation, but active participation. But what are we to make of the subjective nature of this process? In essence, symbolic interpretation serves as a bridge to the unconscious, allowing us to translate the hidden language of the soul into conscious understanding. But it is a subjective process. There is no single, correct meaning, and the process is deeply personal, as individual experiences will heavily influence the interpretation. Remaining open to multiple interpretations and trusting one's own intuition is vital. This understanding is crucial for integrating mystical experiences into daily life. This creates a path forward, but the path is not without dangers. While symbolic interpretation can be a powerful tool for self-discovery, it's crucial to be aware of the potential for misinterpretation and the seductive allure of the irrational. After all, not every light is of the divine. The misinterpretation of mystical experiences can lead to idealization, delusion, and psychological imbalance, which we'll discuss next. But is the path of mystical exploration always illuminated? While the allure of seeing beyond the veil promises profound insights and transformative experiences, it also presents a subtle yet significant danger: the risk of misinterpretation. Are all mystical experiences inherently positive and beneficial, or can they lead to significant psychological pitfalls if approached without proper discernment? Framing the question this way compels us to acknowledge that the path to enlightenment is not always paved with gold. These dangers are not inherent flaws in mystical experiences themselves, but rather consequences of cognitive biases, emotional vulnerabilities, and a lack of critical thinking. The human psyche, with its inherent need for meaning and its susceptibility to suggestion, can easily distort or misinterpret these experiences, especially when coupled with pre-existing psychological distress. Consider, for instance, the pervasive human tendency toward confirmation bias, where individuals selectively seek out and interpret information that confirms their existing beliefs, while ignoring or dismissing contradictory evidence. This bias can be particularly potent in the context of mystical experiences, leading individuals to cherry-pick aspects of their experiences that align with their desired narratives, while overlooking or rationalizing away anything that challenges their worldview. What's more, those who are already psychologically vulnerable, struggling with anxiety, depression, or trauma, may be particularly susceptible to misinterpreting mystical experiences, projecting their own unresolved issues onto the experience and further entrenching themselves in distorted patterns of thinking and feeling. Is there a way to guard against this? This brings us to the concept of spiritual bypassing, a phenomenon where individuals use spiritual ideas and practices to avoid dealing with unresolved emotional issues or psychological challenges. Instead of confronting painful emotions or addressing difficult life circumstances, they may retreat into spiritual practices, using them as a form of escapism or avoidance. But what exactly does it mean to bypass aspects of healthy development? It might involve using concepts like oneness or non-duality to dismiss legitimate feelings of anger, sadness, or grief, or using spiritual practices to avoid setting healthy boundaries in relationships. The danger of spiritual bypassing lies in its ability to create a false sense of spiritual progress, masking underlying psychological issues that continue to fester beneath the surface. One common form of misinterpretation is idealization, the tendency to exaggerate the positive aspects of a mystical experience while ignoring or minimizing the negative or challenging aspects. This can lead to unrealistic expectations, disappointment, and a distorted view of reality. Someone might, for example, interpret a vision of light and bliss as a sign of their own inherent perfection, failing to recognize the shadow aspects of their personality that still require integration. Such idealization can lead to a sense of spiritual arrogance, a belief that one has transcended the ordinary human condition and is therefore immune to the challenges and tribulations of everyday life. How might this manifest? Perhaps in the form of a guru, certain that they are above all others. In contrast to idealization, delusion involves the formation of fixed, false beliefs that are not based on reality, often accompanied by a detachment from the external world. While mystical experiences can be deeply transformative and meaningful, they can sometimes trigger or exacerbate delusional thinking, particularly in individuals with pre-existing mental health conditions. Consider the case of an individual with schizophrenia who experiences a vision of being chosen by God to save the world. While such an experience might feel profoundly real and meaningful to the individual, it could also serve as a catalyst for delusional beliefs and behaviors, leading them to act in ways that are harmful to themselves or others. This highlights the delicate balance between spiritual insight and psychological stability, and the importance of seeking professional help when mystical experiences become overwhelming or disruptive. Are there clear diagnostic criteria, or is it a judgment call? Psychological imbalance represents another potential pitfall, characterized by the disruption of emotional equilibrium, leading to anxiety, depression, or other mental health symptoms. Intense mystical experiences can overwhelm the nervous system and disrupt the normal functioning of the brain, leading to emotional instability and cognitive impairment. This is particularly true for individuals who lack adequate coping mechanisms or support systems. A person may emerge from an intense meditative retreat feeling disoriented, anxious, and unable to function in their daily lives. They may struggle to integrate their newfound insights into their existing worldview, leading to feelings of cognitive dissonance and emotional distress. How can we prevent this from happening? These three aspects, idealization, delusion, and imbalance, are often interconnected and can feed into each other, creating a downward spiral of psychological distress. For example, an individual who idealizes a mystical experience may be more likely to develop delusional beliefs about their own abilities or status, which in turn can lead to psychological imbalance and a further detachment from reality. It is vital, therefore, to approach mystical experiences with a healthy dose of skepticism, humility, and self-awareness, recognizing the potential for both positive and negative outcomes. But what does this look like in practice? Consider the case of an individual who became fixated on a particular mystical experience, neglecting their personal responsibilities and alienating their friends and family. This individual idealized the experience, believing it to be a sign of their specialness or chosen status, and this belief led to a sense of entitlement and grandiosity. They may have started spending excessive amounts of time meditating or engaging in other spiritual practices, neglecting their work, their relationships, and their own physical health. As a result, their life began to unravel, and they became increasingly isolated and unhappy. This underscores the importance of grounding mystical experiences in everyday reality and of maintaining a healthy balance between spiritual pursuits and practical responsibilities. History also offers cautionary tales of individuals or groups who developed delusional beliefs based on misinterpreted mystical experiences, leading to harmful or destructive behaviors. The rise of various cults and extremist groups provides a stark reminder of the dangers of uncritical acceptance and the potential for charismatic leaders to exploit vulnerable individuals. Refer, for example, to examples of cults that have been influenced by distorted interpretations of religious or spiritual texts, leading to acts of violence, manipulation, and exploitation. These examples highlight the importance of critical thinking, independent judgment, and a healthy skepticism toward authority figures. How can we distinguish between genuine spiritual insight and delusional thinking? Mystical experiences can also become a way to avoid dealing with unresolved trauma or emotional pain, resulting in further psychological distress. A person may use an idea of oneness to to bypass their own hurt feelings over the ending of a relationship, or they may use spiritual practices to avoid confronting their own feelings of inadequacy or shame. This pattern of spiritual bypassing can perpetuate a cycle of emotional avoidance, preventing individuals from healing and growing in a healthy way. Instead of confronting their demons, they seek refuge in a spiritual fantasy, ultimately hindering their own psychological and spiritual development. Furthermore, the allure of conspiratorial thinking can be a spiritual seeking gone astray. The human mind naturally seeks patterns and explanations, and in the absence of clear answers, it can easily fall prey to misinformation and paranoia. This is especially true in times of uncertainty and social upheaval, when individuals may feel a heightened sense of anxiety and vulnerability. Analyze the psychological factors that can lead individuals down rabbit holes of misinformation, such as the need for control, the desire for belonging, and the tendency to trust information that confirms existing biases. We will return to this notion of conspiratorial thinking later, because this is an area that demands our full attention. In essence, mystical experiences are not inherently dangerous, but require careful interpretation and integration to avoid potential pitfalls. The key lies in maintaining a balanced perspective, acknowledging both the potential benefits and the potential risks of these experiences. Without proper discernment, the very experiences that could lead to profound growth can instead become sources of delusion and imbalance. How does one maintain this balance? Therefore, it is vitally important to cultivate critical thinking, self-awareness, and to seek guidance from qualified professionals when engaging with mystical experiences. Question your own assumptions, challenge your own beliefs, and be open to feedback from trusted sources. Remember that the path to enlightenment is not a solo journey, and that seeking support and guidance from others can be invaluable in navigating the complexities of the mystical realm. Having explored the potential dangers of misinterpreting mystical experiences, let's now turn to the question of how we can approach these experiences in a way that promotes psychological well-being and spiritual growth, rather than leading to delusion or imbalance, which we'll cover in the next section. Having explored the potential dangers of misinterpreting mystical experiences, it's clear that seeing beyond the veil requires more than just a willingness to open oneself to the unknown. But how does one navigate the ethereal realms without losing touch with the tangible world? What is the value of experiencing the ecstatic if one's daily life crumbles? This brings us to the crucial role of grounding practices. Grounding, in this context, refers to a set of techniques designed to maintain a strong connection to the physical world, preventing psychological overwhelm both during and after mystical experiences. Imagine mystical experiences as sky-gazing, a soaring journey into the vast expanse of consciousness, while grounding, conversely, is earth-gazing, a deliberate focus on the here and now. Each holds immense value, allowing us to experience the depths and heights of existence, but each also carries its own inherent risks. Is it wise to remain perpetually lost in the clouds? Or should one always stare at the ground? Grounding, therefore, isn't about suppressing or denying mystical experiences. It's about integrating them into one's daily life in a healthy and balanced way. It is not about ego death, but about ego embodiment. It's about taking the insights gleaned from altered states and applying them to improve one's earthly existence. For those who seek transcendence as an escape from the mundane, grounding may seem counterintuitive, even antithetical to their goals. But for those who view mystical perception as a tool for enhancing their lives, grounding is an indispensable practice. These grounding practices are essential for psychological safety and stability, especially for individuals who are prone to anxiety, dissociation, or other mental health challenges. It's important to acknowledge that not everyone is equipped to handle the intensity of mystical experiences. Those with a dissociative disorder, for example, should not push their boundaries, as doing so could exacerbate their symptoms and lead to further psychological distress. But how can we ensure that mystical exploration remains a source of growth and insight rather than a trigger for imbalance? For this, we turn to specific grounding techniques. These techniques can be categorized by sensory modality, offering a diverse range of options to suit individual preferences and needs. Visually, one can focus on specific objects in the environment, noting their colors, shapes, and textures. Auditory grounding involves listening to calming sounds, such as nature sounds or instrumental music. Tactile grounding can involve holding a grounding stone, walking barefoot on the earth, or engaging in a massage. Olfactory grounding utilizes essential oils, such as lavender or chamomile, to evoke a sense of calm and relaxation. Gustatory grounding involves drinking a cup of herbal tea or eating a small snack, savoring the flavors and textures. Proprioceptive grounding, perhaps less familiar, involves engaging in physical exercise, such as yoga or walking, to reconnect with the body. But what are the psychological benefits of each of these techniques? Each of these grounding techniques offers specific psychological benefits, often linked to specific neurological or physiological mechanisms. Tactile grounding, for example, can stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system, promoting relaxation and reducing anxiety. The act of holding a smooth stone or feeling the earth beneath one's feet can trigger a cascade of calming responses in the body, slowing the heart rate, lowering blood pressure, and easing muscle tension. Similarly, proprioceptive grounding through physical exercise encourages the mind to focus on the body, interrupting thought loops and reducing mental chatter. By consciously engaging with physical sensations, one can anchor oneself in the present moment, breaking free from the grip of anxiety or rumination. But the value of grounding extends beyond mere symptom relief. Consider how the value of grounding connects to the archetypes we've discussed. If one is on a hero's journey, grounding might involve taking time to sharpen one's sword and prepare for the road ahead, rather than wandering aimlessly into danger. It is the rational aspect balancing the irrational. The hero understands that courage and preparation are needed for success. If one is embodying the magician archetype, grounding might involve carefully studying the properties of different herbs before concocting a potion, ensuring that one's intentions are aligned with ethical considerations. These are methods to connect mystical exploration to one's life. However, grounding alone is insufficient. One must also take care of the self. In addition to grounding practices, self-care plays a crucial role in maintaining psychological well-being during and after mystical experiences. Self-care can be defined as a set of practices that promote physical, emotional, and mental well-being. It's a conscious and deliberate effort to nourish oneself, ensuring that one's needs are met and that one's resources are replenished. However, some individuals who push boundaries with mystical experiences can become addicted to the practice, neglecting basic self-care in their pursuit of altered states. They may prioritize meditation over meals or spiritual retreats over sleep, ultimately undermining their own well-being. Furthermore, the role of routine in providing structure, stability, and predictability cannot be overstated, as it creates a sense of safety and security in a world that often feels chaotic and uncertain. A regular sleep schedule, healthy diet, and consistent exercise can help to regulate the nervous system and prevent psychological overwhelm. But routine can be challenging, especially for those who crave novelty and excitement. How can we strike a balance between the desire for exploration and the need for stability? One must consider that discipline may be needed to go farther into the esoteric realms. One must also set healthy boundaries. This includes saying no to excessive demands and prioritizing one's own needs, as overextending oneself can lead to burnout, exhaustion, and increased vulnerability to psychological distress. It also includes guarding one's time and energy, protecting oneself from toxic relationships or draining commitments. It requires a willingness to disappoint others, recognizing that one's own well-being is paramount. But how does one learn to set healthy boundaries, especially if one has a history of people-pleasing or self-sacrifice? It is also important to connect the need for self-care and healthy routines to our previous points about idealization. Just because one can journey through the astral plane doesn't mean one should journey through the astral plane. One can fall into the trap of thinking they are enlightened because of their astral travels, leading to neglecting the self. Synthesizing the information presented thus far, the importance of grounding practices, self-care, and routine in integrating mystical experiences in a healthy and balanced way is clear. Mystical journeying can be likened to a marathon. Rest, food, hydration, and preparation are essential, but this brings us to another crucial consideration: ethics. If one receives information about others during a mystical experience, should they act on it? Is that ethical? Does that help them? This is where the ethical considerations of mystical practice come into play. Having explored the importance of grounding, self-care, and ethical considerations, let's now turn to the question of how we can integrate mystical experiences into our personal journey of individuation and live a more meaningful and fulfilling life, which we'll cover in the concluding section. Having explored the importance of grounding, self-care, and ethical considerations, let's now turn to the question of how we can integrate mystical experiences into our personal journey of individuation and live a more meaningful and fulfilling life. But what is individuation, and how do mystical experiences play a role? Are these experiences merely fleeting moments of transcendence, or can they serve as catalysts for profound and lasting psychological transformation? Individuation, as conceptualized by Carl Jung, is the lifelong psychological process of becoming a whole and integrated self, a process of differentiating from the collective psyche, while simultaneously recognizing one's connection to it. It is not, as some might mistakenly believe, a process of ego inflation or narcissistic self-aggrandizement. Instead, it is a journey of self-discovery, requiring the courageous confrontation and integration of both conscious and unconscious aspects of the personality. It's a process of recognizing and integrating conscious and unconscious aspects of the personality, rather than conforming to societal expectations. Are you merely playing the role assigned to you, or are you answering the call of your true self? Individuation is about answering that call, and it often requires venturing into uncharted territory. Mystical experiences, while not essential for individuation, can be powerful tools in navigating this inner landscape. Mystical experiences, then, can act as potential catalysts for individuation, offering profound insights and unique opportunities for self-discovery. They can accelerate the individuation process by shattering rigid belief systems, revealing hidden aspects of the self, and fostering a deeper connection to the transpersonal realm. These experiences can provide a glimpse beyond the confines of the ego, offering a broader perspective on one's life, purpose, and place in the universe. However, it's important to note that mystical experiences are not a guaranteed path to individuation. They are merely a potential catalyst. One can still achieve individuation without ever having a mystical experience, just as one can have multiple mystical experiences without ever achieving true individuation. What is the difference? Individuation requires conscious effort, self-reflection, and a willingness to integrate the insights gained into one's daily life. Without these elements, mystical experiences can remain isolated events, disconnected from the ongoing process of psychological growth. Therefore, there is a reciprocal relationship between individuation and mystical experiences. Those who are more individuated are better equipped to handle mystical experiences, and those who have mystical experiences can advance in individuation. Individuation can provide a solid foundation for exploring mystical states safely and productively, while mystical experiences can fuel the individuation process by providing valuable insights and guidance. This is because, like all powerful tools, mystical experience is only as good as the hands wielding it. As such, the ego must be strong enough to integrate the experience into the journey of individuation. Are you strong enough to face the mysteries beyond the veil? During the individuation journey, different archetypes are activated at different stages, each presenting unique challenges and opportunities for growth. Early in the process, the shadow may be encountered, prompting confrontation and integration. This often involves acknowledging and accepting the darker aspects of the self, the repressed emotions, and the unacceptable impulses that have been relegated to the unconscious. Are you willing to confront your shadow, or will you allow it to control you from the depths of your unconscious? Later in the process, the anima or animus may emerge, facilitating a deeper understanding of the inner masculine and feminine. This involves integrating these opposing forces within the psyche, leading to a greater sense of wholeness and balance. Are you able to embrace both your masculine and feminine sides, or are you trapped in rigid gender stereotypes? Mystical experiences can provide a unique lens through which to explore these archetypes, offering direct encounters with these powerful forces within the psyche. Consider mystical experience through various spiritual traditions. Shamanism, for example, involves journeying to other realms of consciousness to gain wisdom and healing. Hindu yoga aims for samadhi, a state of union with the divine. Buddhist meditation seeks nirvana, the cessation of suffering. Christian mysticism strives for union with God through prayer and contemplation. Each of these traditions, despite their differences in language and cultural context, shares a common thread: the pursuit of a transpersonal experience that transcends the limitations of the ego. What is the symbolic significance of each respective process? Shamanic journeying often involves encounters with spirit animals and ancestral guides, representing aspects of the unconscious that can offer guidance and support. Samadhi involves a merging of the individual consciousness with the universal consciousness, dissolving the boundaries between self and other. Nirvana involves the extinguishing of the ego's desires and attachments, leading to a state of peace and liberation. Christian mysticism involves a direct experience of God's love and grace, transforming the individual from within. These traditions are also strikingly similar. In shamanism, the initiate goes on a journey to bring back wisdom. Likewise, in Buddhist meditation, the initiate is going on an internal journey to quell the self. In each, the death of the previous self is required to make way for the new one. But how might an individual advance in these traditions? What happens when some get ahead of others on their spiritual paths? This leads us to the idea of spiritual emergence. Spiritual emergence is a term used to describe the process of psychological transformation that occurs when individuals undergo profound spiritual experiences. This progression, however, can lead to tension between those who have advanced and those who are beginning. Some may be more receptive to advanced stages, while others may be more resistant. Those who have had a glimpse of the transpersonal realm may find it difficult to relate to those who are still firmly rooted in the material world. And those who are just beginning their spiritual journey may feel intimidated or overwhelmed by those who seem to have achieved a higher level of consciousness. This is because these experiences can shatter one's sense of identity, challenge one's deeply held beliefs, and lead to a profound re-evaluation of one's life. Is it better to stay in the dark than to face the light? Jung himself underwent a confrontation with the unconscious, a period of intense inner exploration that profoundly shaped his psychological theories. This experience, which he documented in the Red Book, can be seen as a model of individuation through a mystical lens. During this time, Jung engaged in active imagination, a technique for consciously interacting with the contents of the unconscious. He encountered archetypal figures, confronted his shadow, and explored the depths of his own psyche. This journey, while deeply personal, offers valuable insights into the process of individuation and the role that mystical experiences can play in it. But can these insights be applied to others? What happens when worlds collide, when the mystical and the mundane intersect in the life of an individual? Consider the case of Sarah, a 35-year-old woman who underwent a transformative mystical experience during a period of intense personal crisis. Sarah had always been a pragmatic and rational person, skeptical of anything that couldn't be explained by science. However, after experiencing a series of traumatic events, including the death of her father and the loss of her job, she found herself drawn to explore alternative forms of healing. One day, while attending a meditation retreat, Sarah had a profound mystical experience that completely changed her perspective on life. During the experience, she felt a sense of unity with all things, a dissolving of the boundaries between herself and the universe. She encountered a powerful archetypal figure, a wise old woman who offered her guidance and support. And she confronted her shadow, acknowledging the anger, resentment, and fear that she had been suppressing for years. How did this mystical experience impact Sarah's individuation process? It led to a profound shift in self-awareness and behavior. Sarah realized that she had been living her life according to the expectations of others, rather than following her own inner guidance. She began to make positive changes in her life, quitting her unfulfilling job, pursuing her creative passions, and ending a toxic relationship. She integrated the insights she gained during the mystical experience into her daily life, using them to navigate challenges and make decisions that were aligned with her true self. In contrast, consider the journey of Mark, who also had a profound mystical experience, but with very different results. Mark had always been drawn to the esoteric and the occult, seeking mystical experiences as a means of escaping his mundane existence. During a psychedelic experience, Mark believed he had achieved enlightenment, that he had transcended the limitations of the ego and attained a state of perfect knowledge. However, instead of integrating this experience into his life, Mark became increasingly detached from reality. He neglected his responsibilities, abandoned his relationships, and became convinced that he was a chosen one, destined to lead humanity to a new era of spiritual awakening. The wisdom was received, but he neglected his real-world actions. What happened to Mark? Why did his mystical experience lead to delusion and detachment rather than growth and integration? These cases highlight a critical point. Real-world actions are still paramount for a functional life. Receiving wisdom is only half the equation. Acting upon it is the other half. The information must be balanced with the mundane. But what does this balance look like? Is it always a 50-50 split, or does it vary on an individual basis? Some may require a greater emphasis on the practical, while others may thrive with a more mystical orientation. In essence, mystical experiences can be powerful catalysts for individuation, but only when approached with awareness, intention, and a willingness to integrate the experience into one's daily life. Jung emphasized the importance of lived experience, of grounding the ethereal with the mundane, and of integrating the insights gained with real-world actions. Remember, balance is not always 50-50. What it looks like varies on an individual basis. Ultimately, individuation is not about escaping from reality, but about embracing it fully, with all its challenges and opportunities. While mystical experiences can illuminate the path towards wholeness, they can also cast long shadows if the darker aspects of the self are not acknowledged and integrated. This is something we'll explore in our concluding section. If mystical experiences can illuminate the path towards wholeness, what happens when the map is obscured by our own inner darkness? We've established that individuation is incomplete without acknowledging the shadow, but how exactly do we face the beast within? The path towards wholeness requires confronting aspects of the self that are repressed, disowned, or deemed unacceptable by the conscious mind. This is shadow work, the hero's journey into the underworld of the psyche. The shadow is often perceived as a repository of negative traits, but this is a limited view. Jung recognized the shadow as not merely negative, but as a repository of untapped potential, creativity, and instinctual wisdom. It's a dark mirror, reflecting not only flaws and weaknesses, but also hidden strengths and unrealized possibilities. These are not inherently evil, but simply aspects of ourselves that we have rejected or disowned. Could it be that the very qualities we despise in others are reflections of our own unacknowledged potential? Exploring our shadow is not about wallowing in negativity, but about reclaiming these lost parts of ourselves. However, the dangers of ignoring the shadow are immense. Repressed shadow aspects can manifest in destructive ways, including projection, compulsive behavior, and susceptibility to external manipulation. When we fail to acknowledge our own darkness, we are more likely to project it onto others, seeing our own flaws and weaknesses in those around us. This can lead to misunderstandings, conflicts, and even prejudice. Furthermore, repressed shadow aspects can erupt in the form of compulsive behaviors, addictions, and self-destructive patterns. Jung's analysis of Hitler serves as a chilling example of someone overtaken by the shadow. Hitler, unable to confront his own inner darkness, projected it onto others, leading to unspeakable atrocities. Are we, too, susceptible to the seductive power of the shadow? But what exactly are the aspects of the shadow, and how do they manifest in mystical experiences? Repressed emotions such as anger, fear, and grief might surface as terrifying visions or encounters with monstrous figures. Rejected qualities like weakness, vulnerability, and dependence might appear as self-sabotaging thoughts or feelings of unworthiness. Unconscious patterns such as addictions, compulsions, and self-destructive behaviors might manifest as temptations or urges to abandon the spiritual path. It's as if the unconscious is staging a drama, using symbolic language to communicate its hidden contents. But how do we decipher this language? These shadow manifestations can be interpreted symbolically, providing valuable insights into one's inner world. A vision of a demon might represent repressed anger, a feeling of unworthiness might reflect a fear of failure, and a temptation to abandon the path might signify a resistance to change. By approaching these experiences with curiosity and a willingness to explore their symbolic meaning, we can gain a deeper understanding of our own psyche. This is the essence of shadow work: to transform the darkness into light, to integrate the rejected aspects of ourselves into a more complete and authentic whole. Are you ready to embark on this transformative journey? It's also important to highlight the difference between good and evil shadows. While we often focus on the negative aspects of the shadow, it also contains positive qualities that we have disowned or repressed. A person may be ashamed of their artistic abilities due to the judgment of family members. If they enter a mystical experience, they may realize the value of integrating that artistic side. This is the good shadow, the hidden potential that is waiting to be discovered. Why do we sometimes resist our own gifts and talents? Perhaps it's fear of failure, fear of success, or simply a lack of self-belief. Whatever the reason, integrating the good shadow is essential for living a fulfilling and authentic life. To illustrate this, consider the case of a 40-year-old man named David. David had always been a successful businessman, but he felt a deep sense of emptiness and dissatisfaction. During a meditation retreat, David had a profound mystical experience that forced him to confront his shadow. In his vision, he encountered a dark and menacing figure that represented his repressed anger and aggression. He also encountered a small, wounded child that symbolized his vulnerability and fear of intimacy. David, through this experience, felt how he had always prided himself on being rational and in control, repressing his emotions and avoiding vulnerability at all costs. He saw how this repression had led to a cold and distant relationship with his wife and children. Did this confrontation change David's life? Yes, it did. Over time, David acknowledged his anger, recognized its source in past traumas, and found healthy ways to express it, such as through exercise and creative expression. He allowed himself to be vulnerable, sharing his fears and insecurities with his wife and children. The symbolic language of David's mystical experience provided valuable insights into his inner world. The vision of the menacing figure represented his repressed aggression, while the wounded child symbolized his vulnerability and fear. By confronting these shadow aspects, David was able to integrate them into his conscious identity, resulting in increased self-awareness, emotional resilience, and authenticity. Consider this a success story. What, however, do less clear-cut examples teach us? Consider the integration journeys of several people with different shadow types. Sarah, a timid and introverted librarian, discovered a hidden wellspring of assertiveness and leadership potential through shadow work. Mark, a highly critical and judgmental lawyer, learned to embrace compassion and empathy by confronting his own inner insecurities. And Maria, a perfectionistic and self-demanding artist, found liberation and joy by accepting her flaws and imperfections. Before integrating, they reported feeling trapped and constrained by their own self-imposed limitations. After integration, they reported feeling more alive, authentic, and empowered. Anger diminished, happiness blossomed, self-confidence soared, and relationship quality improved. What does this say about the transformative potential of shadow work? In essence, shadow integration is a crucial step in the individuation process and can be powerfully facilitated by mystical experiences. Confronting and integrating the shadow allows one to access untapped potential, heal emotional wounds, and live a more authentic and fulfilling life. This ongoing process requires attention and integration, for the shadow is a dynamic and evolving aspect of the personality. What happens then when we successfully integrate the shadow? By integrating the shadow, we create space for the emergence of the self, the ultimate source of wholeness, meaning, and connection to something larger than ourselves, which we'll explore in our concluding section. By integrating the shadow, we create space for the emergence of the self, the ultimate source of wholeness, meaning, and connection to something larger than ourselves. But what does this self truly entail, and how does it manifest in our lives? We've explored the ego, the conscious I, and the shadow, the repressed aspects of our personality. Now we turn to the transpersonal self, the culmination of individuation, a concept that extends beyond the personal ego to encompass a sense of unity, interconnectedness, and profound meaning. Is this merely a psychological construct, or does it point to something more profound about the nature of reality? The transpersonal self is not simply an enhanced ego or an idealized version of ourselves. It represents a fundamental shift in perspective, from a focus on individual needs and desires to an orientation towards universal values and interconnectedness. The ego, with its concerns about survival, success, and social acceptance, often operates from a place of fear and scarcity. The transpersonal self, on the other hand, embodies qualities of wisdom, compassion, creativity, and unconditional love. It transcends individual limitations, connecting us to a larger purpose and a deeper sense of meaning. Consider the concept of ego death, often described in mystical traditions as a necessary step towards enlightenment. This is not a literal annihilation of the self, but a temporary dissolution of the ego's grip, allowing for a glimpse of the transpersonal self. Yet, this concept terrifies many, for what could be more frightening than the loss of one's own identity? It's important to note that the transpersonal self is not an external entity, some kind of divine being separate from ourselves. Rather, it is an inner potential, a source of wisdom and guidance residing within each individual. It is accessible through mystical experiences, through moments of deep connection, and through the ongoing process of individuation. Jung connected the transpersonal self to the imago Dei, the image of God within, highlighting the potential for mystical experiences to reveal this inner divinity. What does God even mean in this context? Is it merely a culturally assigned term, a placeholder for the ineffable, or does it point to a universal principle that transcends language and belief? Language itself can become a barrier, trapping us in culturally conditioned concepts and preventing us from experiencing the reality directly. The characteristics of the transpersonal self extend beyond mere intellectual understanding. It embodies a sense of perspective, enabling individuals to see beyond their immediate problems and connect to a larger purpose. It fosters compassion, empathy, and a deep sense of responsibility towards all beings. It inspires creativity, innovation, and a desire to contribute to the well-being of the world. When we act from the place of the transpersonal self, we are guided by our deepest values and aspirations, aligning our actions with our sense of meaning and purpose. This is often accompanied by what we call numinous experiences, encounters with the sacred or the divine. These experiences are characterized by feelings of awe, wonder, and a sense of being in the presence of something greater than oneself. What, then, distinguishes a genuine numinous experience from an ego-driven projection, a narcissistic inflation of the ego? Numinous experiences can induce altered states of consciousness, temporarily suspending the filters of perception and allowing access to deeper levels of awareness. Meditation, prayer, shamanic practices, and even certain psychedelic substances can facilitate these states. However, it's crucial to differentiate between genuine numinous experiences and ego-driven projections. A genuine experience is marked by a sense of humility, awe, and a recognition of something beyond oneself. An ego-driven projection, on the other hand, is characterized by narcissistic inflation, a sense of specialness, and a desire to control or manipulate the experience for personal gain. Consider the dangers of spiritual bypassing, using spiritual concepts to avoid facing uncomfortable emotions or unresolved psychological issues. How do we distinguish between a genuine spiritual insight and a cleverly disguised form of self-deception? Throughout history, mystics from various traditions have described experiences that resonate with the concept of the transpersonal self. St. Teresa of Avila spoke of union with God, Rumi wrote of dissolving into the beloved, and the Buddha described the attainment of nirvana. Despite their different cultural and religious backgrounds, these mystics shared common themes: a sense of unity, interconnectedness, and the dissolving of boundaries between the self and the other. The symbolic language of these experiences often includes motifs such as light, wholeness, mandalas, and the merging of opposites. The symbol of light can represent enlightenment, the mandala can symbolize wholeness, and the dissolving of boundaries can signify the overcoming of separation. What do these symbols tell us about the underlying structure of consciousness? These experiences have the potential to foster compassion, empathy, and a deep sense of responsibility towards all beings. If we truly recognize our interconnectedness, how can we stand idly by while others suffer? The expansion of care towards all beings has profound ethical implications, challenging us to consider the consequences of our actions on a global scale. Consider the trolley problem thought experiment, where one must choose between sacrificing one person to save 5. How does our decision change when we recognize our interconnectedness with all beings, when we feel the suffering of the one as our own? This expansive view is at the heart of true compassion. In essence, mystical experiences can provide powerful glimpses of the transpersonal self, revealing our inherent wholeness, unity, and connection to something larger than ourselves. But these experiences are not always easy or straightforward. They can be disorienting, challenging, and even terrifying. Integrating them into one's life requires ongoing effort, self-reflection, and a willingness to embrace both the light and the shadow. Mystical experiences are not a destination, but a journey, and the real work lies in integrating the insights gained into our daily lives. Having glimpsed the transpersonal self, how do we cultivate a life that reflects this deeper connection, living in alignment with our values and contributing to the well-being of the world? What does a life of sustained mystical insight even look like? Is it attainable, or is it merely a fleeting glimpse of something beyond our grasp? These are the questions we must explore as we continue our journey. We've glimpsed the transpersonal self and begun to ask how to cultivate a life that reflects this deeper connection. But what if the first step isn't striving for some lofty ideal, but rather a radical alignment with your most deeply held values. What are values, really? How are they defined, and where do they even come from? These questions form the bedrock of a life lived with sustained mystical insight, one where our actions resonate with the whispers of the soul rather than the clamor of the world. Values alignment is a conscious effort to identify and prioritize your core values, ensuring that your actions and choices are consistent with those values. It's more than just knowing what you believe in. It's about living in accordance with that knowledge. What, then, is the difference between simply having a value and actually acting upon it? Why do so many people fail to live in alignment with what they claim to hold dear? Often, the answer lies in a lack of conscious awareness, a failure to critically examine the beliefs and assumptions that shape our behavior. We may think we value honesty, for example, but find ourselves bending the truth to avoid conflict or gain an advantage. This misalignment creates inner dissonance, a sense of unease and dissatisfaction that can ultimately erode our sense of meaning and purpose. The opposite, however, can be challenging as well, for by living a life in alignment, we can be ostracized and shamed by others who do not value what we do. And what happens when living in alignment means we must leave people behind or leave our families behind? Values alignment is essential for living a life of sustained mystical insight because it provides a moral compass and a sense of purpose, guiding your actions in alignment with the transpersonal self. It's a conscious effort to cultivate integrity, to bridge the gap between your inner world and your outer actions. Think of it as the keel of a ship, providing stability and direction as you navigate the turbulent waters of life. Without this alignment, you risk being tossed about by every passing wave, losing your way in a sea of conflicting desires and external pressures. Consider the dangers of spiritual bypassing, using spiritual concepts to avoid facing difficult emotions or making difficult choices. Values alignment pulls you away from this tendency, grounding you in the practical realities of your life and forcing you to confront the ethical implications of your beliefs. But what happens when your values conflict with the values of society? Furthermore, it's crucial to differentiate between genuine values and culturally conditioned beliefs. What is the difference between what you think is important and what you know is important? Many of our beliefs are simply inherited from our families, our communities, or our cultures, without ever being subjected to critical examination. We may believe that success is measured by wealth and status, for example, or that happiness is found in romantic relationships, without ever questioning whether these beliefs truly resonate with our deepest selves. This is where self-reflection becomes essential, the courage to challenge the status quo and to define your own values based on your own experiences and insights. This then begs the question of what authenticity really means. Is it merely the absence of external influence, or does it involve a deeper process of self-discovery, a stripping away of false identities to reveal the truth that lies beneath? And it's not enough to simply identify your values. You must also prioritize them. Some values are more fundamental than others, serving as the foundation upon which all other values are built. For example, if you value honesty and compassion, you may need to prioritize honesty, even when it leads to difficult conversations or uncomfortable truths. This prioritization requires careful consideration and a willingness to make difficult choices. What happens when two deeply held values come into conflict? Do you compromise, or do you choose one over the other? The answer, of course, is rarely simple and often requires a nuanced understanding of the specific context and your own personal needs. What we often miss is that the price of not living a values-aligned life is the corrosion of the soul, a gradual dimming of the inner light that guides us towards wholeness and meaning. But how do we translate this alignment into action, transforming our values into tangible expressions of our purpose? Individuation has been leading toward a more authentic existence, which can be expressed through your choices and actions. The degree to which you choose to live authentically is the degree to which you will have a mystical existence. What if I told you that mystical existence doesn't have to be some extraordinary feat, like walking on water or seeing the future? Purpose-driven action is the application of your values and insights to create positive change in the world, highlighting the importance of aligning your actions with the needs of others and the well-being of the planet. It's about using your unique gifts and talents to make a difference, however big or small. What if your purpose isn't some grand, world-altering mission, but rather a series of small, intentional acts of kindness, compassion, and creativity? Consider the person who was taught to be a lawyer by their family, but realizes they enjoy being an artist. To live in alignment, they would choose to be an artist, or find a way to incorporate their artistic passions into their law career. The alternative may be a life lived in quiet desperation, a soul slowly suffocating under the weight of unfulfilled potential. Furthermore, contrast this with a materialistic mindset of making money, and introduce a mindset that money is merely a tool to accomplish a goal. Money is not the goal. It is simply a tool. This contrasts with the idea of people making money for frivolous purchases, or simply trying to acquire wealth, status, and power. Purpose-driven action is also about recognizing that your actions have consequences, both intended and unintended. It's about being mindful of the impact you have on the world and striving to minimize harm and maximize benefit. Is it possible to live a life without causing any harm at all? Perhaps not, but we can certainly strive to be more conscious of our impact and to make choices that align with our values, even when those choices are difficult or unpopular. In addition, the archetypes can play a crucial role in guiding your actions, and different archetypes can inspire different forms of purpose-driven action. Consider how the caregiver archetype might inspire acts of service and compassion, tending to the needs of the vulnerable and marginalized. The warrior archetype might inspire acts of courage and justice, fighting for what is right and standing up against oppression. The creator archetype might inspire acts of innovation and beauty, bringing new ideas and creations into the world. Each archetype offers a unique lens through which to view your purpose and to channel your energy. But what happens when your archetypes conflict with each other, when the caregiver clashes with the warrior or the creator with the destroyer? This inner tension can be a source of great creative energy, but it can also lead to confusion and paralysis if not consciously managed. Conscious relationship is a commitment to cultivating authentic, empathetic, and mutually supportive connections with others, recognizing the inherent interconnectedness of all beings. It extends beyond casual interactions and superficial connections, delving into the depths of vulnerability, trust, and mutual respect. But what do relationships even mean in this context? Are they mere interactions, fleeting encounters that leave little lasting impact? Or are they something more profound, connections that nourish the soul and illuminate the path towards wholeness? How do personal boundaries factor into a conscious relationship? Conscious relationship can provide a powerful mirror for self-reflection, allowing you to see yourself more clearly through the eyes of others. By opening yourself to honest feedback and vulnerability, you gain insights into your own patterns, biases, and blind spots. What does it mean to hold space for someone, to create a safe and supportive environment where they can express themselves without judgment or fear? It requires a willingness to listen deeply, to empathize with their experiences, and to offer validation and support, even when you don't necessarily agree with their perspectives. Holding space also involves setting healthy boundaries, protecting your own energy and well-being while still remaining open and compassionate. But how do you navigate the inevitable conflicts that arise in any relationship, especially when those conflicts trigger your own shadow aspects? It's essential to integrate the shadow in relationships, acknowledging and accepting your own flaws and limitations as well as those of others. Relationships, especially intimate ones, often trigger our deepest fears and insecurities, bringing our shadow aspects to the surface. By acknowledging and accepting these aspects, You can prevent them from sabotaging your relationships and create space for greater authenticity and connection. It allows you to see others with greater compassion and understanding, recognizing that everyone is struggling with their own internal demons. You must recognize that people can be highly critical of others because they see those flaws in themselves. What if the very qualities that irritate you most in others are simply reflections of your own unacknowledged shadow aspects? Ongoing self-reflection is a commitment to continuously examining your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, seeking to identify patterns, biases, and areas for growth. It's more than just journaling, which is just recording your experiences, but involves delving into the underlying motivations and assumptions that shape your actions. How often do you pause to examine your own thoughts and feelings, to question your beliefs and assumptions, to challenge your own narratives? Are you willing to confront your own hypocrisy, to acknowledge your own mistakes, to take responsibility for your own actions? The beginner's mindset can create opportunities for change and to consider the world with fresh eyes. What if everything you thought you knew was wrong? A beginner's mindset opens you to new possibilities, new perspectives, and new ways of being. Frame this as a blank canvas, not as a clean slate, for you are starting with something, but you get to decide what to paint on it. It is not just about forgetting the past, but about approaching the future with curiosity and openness. Seeking feedback from trusted sources, being open to constructive criticism, and using these insights to refine your values, actions, and relationships are important. Constructive criticism is not meant to tear down but build up. But how do you ask for constructive criticism in a way that encourages honesty and vulnerability? It requires creating a safe and supportive environment where the other person feels comfortable sharing their honest feedback without fear of judgment or reprisal. And how do you receive that feedback without defensiveness, without taking it personally, without allowing it to trigger your own insecurities? Not all feedback is valid, and it's up to you to determine which feedback is truly helpful and which is simply a reflection of the other person's own biases or projections. In essence, values alignment, purpose-driven action, conscious relationship, and ongoing self-reflection are essential for living a life of sustained mystical insight, transforming profound glimpses into everyday reality. This information is connected to the previous discussion of individuation, the transpersonal self, and shadow work, emphasizing that these concepts are not separate, but interconnected aspects of a holistic journey. While this path may be challenging, it is also deeply rewarding, offering the potential to live a more meaningful, fulfilling, and connected life. Yet, while this is an appealing idea, the question remains: how can one maintain the momentum needed to overcome obstacles and to integrate these insights into daily living? Which we'll explore in our concluding section, offering a final invitation to embrace the journey and live in alignment with your highest potential. What separates the prophet from the madman? Is it the message, or is it the messenger? Is it success? Perhaps the line between profound spiritual insight and debilitating psychological disturbance is thinner than we dare to imagine. We often assume that normal waking consciousness is the only valid or desirable state. But what if both madness and mystical experiences offer alternative, equally valid, perspectives on reality? What if these perspectives, though unconventional, give us insight into the hidden layers of reality? Rigid adherence to conventional norms can stifle creativity and prevent individuals from accessing deeper levels of awareness. The distinction between sanity and madness is not always clear. It is culturally and historically contingent, varying across different societies and time periods. What is considered madness in one context might be revered as spiritual insight in another. Consider the ancient shamans, who entered altered states of consciousness to communicate with spirits and heal the sick. In many indigenous cultures, these individuals were revered as healers and visionaries. Yet, in modern Western societies, similar behaviors might be diagnosed as mental illness. It is crucial to realize that having power or access to power often determines the label ascribed. How can we reconcile these conflicting perspectives, and what does this tell us about the nature of reality itself? Both madness and mystical experiences often share psychological mechanisms involving altered perception, cognitive disorganization, and emotional intensity. Both states can involve heightened sensory awareness, distorted perceptions of space and time, and a loosening of the boundaries between self and other. Colors may appear more vibrant, sounds may become more acute, and the sense of being a separate individual may dissolve into a feeling of oneness with the universe. But while the mystic seeks this transcendence, what of the person driven mad? Cognitive disorganization, a disruption of normal thought processes, can lead to illogical associations, bizarre beliefs, and a breakdown of linear reasoning. This breakdown may sound like madness, but it may also lead to moments of profound insight and creativity. Flow states, or peak experiences, involve a temporary suspension of normal cognitive functions. In these states, individuals may experience a sense of timelessness, effortless action, and a profound connection to something larger than themselves. The difference may be, in fact, how connected the person is to the cultural norms of the society in which they live. The more connected, the more likely to have their experience validated. Emotional intensity also plays a significant role in both madness and mystical experiences, and both states can be characterized by extreme feelings of joy, terror, grief, or ecstasy. These intense emotions can be both transformative and overwhelming, leading to either psychological breakdown or spiritual awakening. Consider the phenomenon of dark night of the soul, a period of intense spiritual crisis characterized by feelings of despair, isolation, and meaninglessness. While this experience can be deeply unsettling, it can also serve as a catalyst for profound spiritual growth, leading to a deeper understanding of the self and the nature of reality. How can we navigate these turbulent emotional waters without being capsized by the storm? Consider the case of Joan of Arc, a historical figure whose visions were interpreted as both divine inspiration and signs of mental illness. Joan, a peasant girl from medieval France, claimed to have received visions and voices from God, directing her to lead the French army against the English during the 100 Years' War. Her visions inspired the French troops, and she played a key role in several important victories. However, her claims of divine guidance were met with skepticism and accusations of heresy. Eventually, she was captured by the English, put on trial, and burned at the stake for witchcraft and heresy. Were her visions a sign of divine inspiration, as she claimed, or were they the product of a disordered mind? The answer, perhaps, lies in the eye of the beholder, or rather, in the hands of those in power. Vincent van Gogh, the celebrated artistic genius, struggled with mental instability, and his unique creative vision was intertwined with his psychological state. Van Gogh's paintings are characterized by their vibrant colors, bold brushstrokes, and intense emotional expression. He used color to convey symbolic meaning, often imbuing his paintings with a sense of spiritual or emotional turmoil. It is said that he saw auras, or energy emanating from people and objects. During periods of intense mental distress, Van Gogh experienced hallucinations and delusions, yet these experiences seemed to fuel his creative output. Was his mental instability a curse, or was it the source of his artistic genius? What if the very thing that caused him so much suffering was also the key to his creative vision? Carl Jung himself experienced visions and altered states of consciousness, documenting these experiences in the Red Book, where he detailed his confrontation with the unconscious and the symbolic figures that emerged from his inner world. Jung grappled with these experiences, which threatened to overwhelm his ego and plunge him into psychosis. Yet, he persevered, developing his theories of archetypes, the collective unconscious, and the process of individuation. How did he have the strength to continue exploring the depths of his own psyche, and how can his experience inform our own journeys of self-discovery? Are we capable of the same courage and resilience in the face of the unknown? Ultimately, there are psychological similarities between mystical insight and madness, acknowledging the risk of pathologizing mystical experiences while emphasizing the importance of distinguishing between genuine spiritual insights and delusion. What separates madness from mystical experience may be the ability to function in society, not necessarily whether the experience is real or fake. It is essential to remember that a strong ego provides a stable foundation for exploring the unconscious mind safely and productively. A weak or fragmented ego is more vulnerable to being overwhelmed by the intensity of mystical experiences, potentially leading to psychological disintegration or delusional thinking. Yet, while a strong ego is essential for navigating the challenges of mystical perception, the ego is not the ultimate authority. We'll explore the complex relationship between the ego and the transpersonal self in our next section, examining how the ego can both facilitate and hinder our access to deeper levels of awareness. The ego, is it the enemy of enlightenment or an essential tool for navigating reality? Let's explore the complex role of the ego in mystical perception, a role that is often misunderstood and unfairly demonized. We often hear that ego death is the goal, but is that really the case? What if the ego, rather than being an obstacle, is actually a necessary structure for psychological stability, and perhaps even a facilitator of profound spiritual insight? Think of the ego as the gatekeeper of your mind, responsible for filtering and organizing the constant stream of sensory input that bombards you every moment. Like a security guard at a nightclub, the ego decides who gets in and who doesn't. It maintains a sense of self, allowing you to experience the world as a coherent individual with a continuous personal history. It helps you navigate the external world, make decisions, and interact with others. But what happens when the gatekeeper takes a break, or when the bouncer is too aggressive? The ego's role in mystical perception is complex and multifaceted, capable of both facilitating and hindering access to deeper levels of awareness. A healthy ego can provide a stable foundation for exploring the unconscious mind safely and productively. But a weak or inflated ego can lead to a whole host of problems. One of the most important distinctions to make is that between ego strength and ego inflation. A strong ego is characterized by stability, resilience, and self-awareness. This is known as ego strength. In other words, a strong ego is like a well-built house, capable of withstanding the storms of life. It can handle challenging experiences, integrate new information, and adapt to changing circumstances without collapsing. It allows you to maintain a sense of self even in the face of adversity, and to act with integrity and purpose. Ego inflation, on the other hand, is a distorted sense of self-importance characterized by grandiosity, narcissism, and a detachment from reality. Imagine someone who believes they are superior to everyone else, entitled to special treatment, and incapable of doing wrong. That is ego inflation. A person with an inflated ego might overestimate their abilities, disregard the needs of others, and fall prey to delusion. This is sometimes tied to spiritual bypassing, where a person uses spiritual ideas and practices to avoid dealing with painful feelings, unresolved wounds, and developmental needs. So, what does a healthy ego look like, and how does it differ from narcissism? Where does one draw the line? Ego inflation can manifest in mystical experiences, leading to a dangerous sense of specialness, entitlement, or even divine authority. Consider the guru who becomes convinced of his own infallibility, demanding absolute obedience from his followers and exploiting them for personal gain. Or the spiritual seeker who believes she has attained enlightenment, becoming judgmental and dismissive of others who are less evolved. This can lead to the belief that one is a chosen one or a spiritual master, fostering a sense of superiority and a disregard for the needs of others. Healthy boundaries are essential in preventing ego inflation. Does one require constant validation from others to confirm their experiences? A balanced perspective requires humility and self-reflection. But how do we prevent ego inflation? Is it better to swing to the other extreme and deny one's strengths or accomplishments? Beyond ego strength and ego inflation lies the concept of ego transcendence. Ego transcendence involves temporarily suspending or loosening the ego's grip on reality, allowing access to deeper levels of awareness and a connection to the transpersonal realm. This is a voluntary and temporary process, not a permanent state of ego death. In fact, ego death is an unwanted, possibly catastrophic outcome. Consider the difference between consciously choosing to meditate and experiencing a sudden psychotic break. Transcendence is the former, and death, in this case, is the latter. Ego transcendence can be achieved through various practices, such as meditation, mindfulness, breathwork, or contemplative prayer. These practices quiet the monkey mind, that constant stream of thoughts, worries, and judgments that normally occupies our attention. They create space for new insights and perspectives to emerge, and allow us to experience a deeper sense of connection to ourselves, to others, and to the universe. But is there a correct way to achieve ego transcendence? Can it be forced, or must it arise spontaneously? The potential for ego transcendence can foster a profound sense of unity, interconnectedness, and meaning, leading to increased compassion, empathy, and a deeper appreciation for the mystery of existence. This connects to Jung's teachings on the collective unconscious, the shared reservoir of human experience and wisdom that lies beneath the surface of our individual minds. Near-death experiences, NDEs, often reveal a glimpse into this collective unconscious, with individuals reporting encounters with archetypal figures, feelings of unconditional love, and a sense of merging with a larger reality. But can these experiences be scientifically verified, or are they simply products of a dying brain? What does the science say about the nature of consciousness and its relationship to the physical body? To illustrate the power of a balanced ego, let's consider the life of the Dalai Lama, an individual who embodies both strength and humility while also exhibiting a deep connection to the transpersonal realm. The Dalai Lama skillfully navigates the challenges of political leadership, offering wisdom and guidance to others while maintaining a compassionate and grounded presence. His teachings emphasize the importance of cultivating inner peace, practicing loving kindness, and working for the benefit of all beings. He is not swayed by fame or power, but remains committed to his spiritual path and his service to humanity. Then there's Thich Nhat Hanh, the Vietnamese Buddhist monk and peace activist, who emphasizes mindfulness, compassion, and social justice. His teachings encourage individuals to cultivate a deep sense of interconnectedness and to act with kindness and awareness in all aspects of their lives. How do these figures skillfully balance the demands of the ego with the callings of the spirit? And how does this compare with those who fail this test? In contrast, we must also remember the historical examples of false prophets or cult leaders who succumb to ego inflation, leading to harmful or destructive behaviors. Jim Jones, the leader of the People's Temple, convinced his followers to commit mass suicide in Jonestown, Guyana, driven by his own inflated sense of importance and his paranoid delusions. Adolf Hitler, fueled by his megalomania and his vision of a master race, unleashed a reign of terror that resulted in the deaths of millions. What psychological factors contributed to their downfall, and what lessons can we learn from their tragic stories? Does unchecked power inevitably lead to corruption and abuse? In essence, the ego plays a crucial role in mystical perception, acting as both a gateway and a potential barrier to deeper levels of awareness. A healthy and balanced ego is characterized by stability, resilience, self-awareness, and a willingness to transcend limitations. Therefore, cultivate both ego strength and ego transcendence through practices like mindfulness meditation, self-reflection, and ethical action. What practices will you personally begin to utilize? By understanding the complex dynamics of the ego, we can navigate the seen and unseen worlds with greater skill and wisdom, cultivating a life that is both grounded and transcendent. But we're just scratching the surface of this topic. What we'll discover next is even more shocking as we attempt to offer practical guidance. In our final section, we'll offer a few concluding thoughts, encouraging you to embrace the journey and live in alignment with your highest potential. While these heightened states carry the potential for imbalance, let us not forget that they also inspire the world. The mad genius trope is common in art, where tortured souls unlock insights that are otherwise unavailable. What if that isn't the only way? What if mystical experiences can serve as catalysts for creative breakthroughs, providing access to new perspectives, insights, and imaginative possibilities? What do artists see that other people don't? Is that trained, or is it intrinsic? Mystical experiences can indeed act as powerful catalysts for creative breakthroughs, offering access to new perspectives and imaginative possibilities. These experiences exist on a spectrum and all provide value. This doesn't require a mental breakdown to experience. Can it be cultivated? Can it be taught? Let's explore the specific psychological mechanisms through which mystical experiences can enhance creativity. One such mechanism is enhanced pattern recognition. Mystical experiences can reveal hidden connections and relationships between seemingly disparate ideas or concepts, fostering innovative thinking and problem-solving. It's as if the veil is lifted, exposing the intricate web that connects all things. Another mechanism is access to the unconscious mind. These experiences can provide access to repressed memories, emotions, and archetypal imagery, enriching the creative process with raw, unfiltered material. Heightened emotional sensitivity also plays a crucial role, fueling creative expression and allowing artists to tap into deeper levels of feeling, conveying profound meaning through their work. Think of a musician whose grief translates into a haunting melody, or a painter whose joy explodes onto the canvas in a symphony of color. Finally, there is the loosening of cognitive constraints. Mystical experiences can temporarily suspend the filters of perception, allowing for more fluid and unconventional thinking, fostering experimentation and originality. These mechanisms are deeply connected to the Jungian archetypes and concepts we discussed earlier. Shadow integration, for example, can unlock parts of the self that were previously unavailable, revealing hidden talents and perspectives. Consider how a painter might use heightened sensory awareness to capture subtle nuances of color and light, transforming the ordinary into the extraordinary. Or how a musician might tap into unconscious emotions to create emotionally resonant music, evoking powerful feelings in the listener. A writer might access archetypal themes to craft compelling narratives that resonate with universal human experiences. And a scientist might use pattern recognition to discover new laws of nature, unlocking the secrets of the universe. However, there is a tension element that must be addressed. Integrating mystical experiences into the creative process is not without its potential downsides. Psychological instability, social isolation, and the risk of burnout are some of the challenges that artists may face. Intense mystical experiences can be overwhelming, leading to anxiety, depression, or even psychosis, particularly for individuals with pre-existing mental health conditions. Thus, artists should not be pushed into mental exhaustion, as that isn't helpful. This gives rise to the archetype of the tortured artist, which has a strong connection to mystical states. But is the romanticized notion that suffering is necessary for creative expression actually true? Is suffering the secret ingredient to art? The tortured artist archetype perpetuates the idea that mental illness is a prerequisite for genius, potentially discouraging individuals from seeking help for their psychological challenges. It also glorifies suffering, creating a dangerous expectation that artists must endure hardship in order to create meaningful work. But is this truly the case? Consider Vincent van Gogh, whose intense mystical experiences were intertwined with his mental health struggles. He channeled his pain and suffering into his work, creating art that resonated deeply with others, but at a significant personal cost. Then there's Sylvia Plath, whose poetry was deeply influenced by her experiences with depression and mental illness. Or Kurt Cobain, whose music captured the angst and alienation of a generation, but whose personal struggles ultimately led to his tragic death. Was it worth it? Can the same artistic heights be achieved without such intense struggles? Or is that struggle the forbidden knowledge that artists throughout history have been unwilling to speak about? Mystical experiences can be powerful catalysts for creative breakthroughs, but they also pose significant challenges, requiring careful integration, self-awareness, and support. It's essential to find a balance between exploring the depths of the unconscious and maintaining a stable connection to the external world. Grounding practices, self-care, and ethical conduct are crucial for managing the intensity of these experiences, preventing burnout, and maintaining healthy relationships. What would the world be like without the influence of mystical insights? By integrating mystical experiences into our creative process, we can unlock new levels of innovation, authenticity, and meaning, transforming our lives and enriching the world around us. By using these practices, artists can manage the intensity of their experiences, prevent burnout, and maintain healthy relationships. By integrating mystical experiences into our creative process, we can unlock new levels of innovation, authenticity, and meaning, transforming our lives and enriching the world around us. But we're just scratching the surface. What we'll discover next is even more shocking as we attempt to offer practical guidance. What if creativity isn't just a skill, but a way of tapping into the deeper currents of human experience? How are these experiences often considered something other than creative fuel? Mystical experiences aren't merely sources of psychological insight. They're also wellsprings of creative inspiration, challenging us to expand our understanding of creative potential. These altered states of consciousness provide access to unconventional ways of thinking, opening doors to original ideas and profound artistic expression. Consider it a playground. Mystical understanding allows the artist to play with the very building blocks of reality itself, rearranging perceptions and forging new connections. However, intention, skill, and mindful interpretation are essential to making that a reality. The artist must be more than just a passive recipient of visions. They must be an active participant in shaping and translating those visions into something meaningful. This requires discipline, training, and a deep understanding of the chosen medium. What qualities found in mystical experiences often lend themselves to a creative atmosphere? Altered perceptions of time and space, heightened sensory awareness, intense emotions, and feelings of interconnectedness are just the tip of the iceberg. Imagine an artist who, during a meditative state, experiences a profound sense of unity with the universe. This feeling might then be channeled into a painting that captures the interconnectedness of all things, or a musical composition that evokes a sense of cosmic harmony. Or perhaps an author has a mystical vision of the future, which results in the birth of a science fiction epic. These elements unlock a realm of imagination where artists can explore novel ideas, challenge conventional norms, and express profound emotions. Note how those who are considered neurotypical often have a block to these experiences due to cultural constraints and expectations to follow conventional ways of thinking. The Western world often penalizes the visionary for failing to follow the rules. This leads to suppression of unique artistic expression. However, it's not all light and beauty. Integration is key. Difficult emotions need to be channeled and made meaningful, not avoided or ignored. The artist must confront their own inner demons, embrace the shadow, and transmute the darkness into light. This process of transformation is often reflected in the artist's work, as they grapple with complex themes and explore the depths of the human psyche. Consider the works of Edvard Munch, whose paintings often depict themes of anxiety, isolation, and despair. Munch himself struggled with mental illness throughout his life, and his art served as a way for him to express his inner turmoil. Or think of the blues music, which is rooted in the suffering and oppression of African Americans. These artists demonstrate how difficult emotions can be channeled into powerful and meaningful works of art. The artist must be willing to confront the pain and suffering of the world and to use their art as a vehicle for healing and transformation. Connecting the dots between some of history's most creative figures and their potential experiences with altered states, visionary insights, and a profound sense of connection to the cosmos reveals a rich tapestry of inspiration. Take William Blake, whose visionary art and poetry were deeply connected to his mystical visions and his unique understanding of the spiritual realm. Blake claimed to have visions of angels and other spiritual beings from a young age, and these visions shaped his artistic and philosophical outlook. How did they shape the message? Did the message change the experiences? Blake's art is characterized by its vivid imagery, its symbolic language, and its profound spiritual insights. He sought to awaken the imagination of his viewers and to inspire them to see the world in a new light. His work is a testament to the power of mystical experiences to fuel creative expression. Consider also the work of Carl Jung himself, noting how he used his personal mystical experiences as material for his work. Jung's The Red Book stands as a testament to the intense effort he put in interpreting and transcribing his visions. The book is a visual and textual record of Jung's journey into the depths of his own unconscious. It is filled with fantastical imagery, symbolic figures, and profound philosophical insights. Jung believed that by confronting and integrating the contents of his unconscious, he could achieve wholeness and self-realization. The Red Book is not just a personal document. It is also a guide for others who seek to explore the depths of their own psyche. Contrast that with more modern examples. Consider the case of modern musicians and artists, such as Kanye West, and make connections to the themes of ego, grandiosity, and authentic creation. West's music is often characterized by its bombastic production, its controversial lyrics, and its exploration of themes such as fame, wealth, and power. While some critics have dismissed West as a narcissist and an egomaniac, others have praised him for his artistic vision and his willingness to push boundaries. West's music can be seen as a reflection of his own inner struggles, as he grapples with issues of ego, identity, and spirituality. Is his embrace of grandiosity a form of creative expression or a symptom of deeper psychological issues? Or perhaps the interplay between the two is precisely what makes his art so compelling. Can an artist use their hubris for good? Though the link between mystical states and creativity is strong, it's crucial to remember that these states are merely tools. Note that this applies to all fields, whether it's science, art, or interpersonal relationships. The quality is dependent on the artist, not the tools they used. A skilled artist can create a masterpiece with the simplest of materials, while an unskilled artist can ruin even the most expensive equipment. The same is true of mystical experiences. They can be a source of great inspiration and insight, but they can also be a source of confusion and delusion. It is up to the individual to use these experiences wisely and to integrate them into their lives in a healthy and productive way. So now we know how these experiences can play a role in creativity. But what does it mean to cultivate them? We'll discuss that next. What if mystical experiences weren't just random occurrences, but something you could actively cultivate? What if seeing beyond the veil was less about passive reception and more about deliberate, skillful exploration? The key lies in recognizing that, like physical fitness, mystical perception requires training, discipline, and mindful intention, and should therefore be viewed no differently than any other pursuit of mental or physical health. However, the path to cultivating these experiences isn't without its perils. We've already discussed the potential for ego inflation, the necessity of shadow integration, and the importance of psychological safety. Why, then, is preparation so essential for this journey? Think of it like any expedition into the unknown. Without proper planning, you risk getting lost, encountering unforeseen dangers, or succumbing to the elements. Spiritual bypassing, delusion, and psychological instability are just some of the hazards that await the unprepared explorer. So, what does a safe journey look like in this context? The cultivation of mystical insights involves both inner and outer practices. These methods are designed to enhance psychological well-being and unlock creative expression, allowing the individual to both manage and channel the transformative potential of these profound experiences. Think of it as inner alchemy, transmuting the base metals of everyday consciousness into the gold of creative inspiration. What specific techniques are most effective in facilitating this alchemical process? One of the most powerful inner tools is mindfulness meditation. But what does meditation accomplish in the context of mystical practice? By training the mind to focus on the present moment, we can reduce mental clutter and create space for creative insights to emerge. Consider it ego management. Regular mindfulness practice can weaken the ego's grip on reality, allowing for more fluid and unconventional thinking. This is because the ego often clings to fixed ideas and rigid beliefs, which can stifle creativity. By loosening the ego's hold, we open ourselves up to new possibilities and perspectives. The trick is to view the ego as a tool, not as the master of the house. Can mindfulness help us achieve that perspective? Another essential practice is active imagination, as discussed earlier. Journaling can be seen as a natural extension of this process. But how can journaling help a person capture a fleeting insight that would otherwise be lost? Imagine a sudden flash of inspiration, a vivid image, or a profound realization that emerges from the depths of your unconscious. Without a way to record it, it might vanish as quickly as it appeared. Journaling provides a space to capture these moments, to explore their meaning, and to integrate them into your conscious awareness. But there are different kinds of journaling. There's stream of consciousness writing, where you simply let your thoughts flow onto the page without censorship. There's dream journaling, where you record your dreams and explore their symbolic content. And there's reflective journaling, where you analyze your experiences and draw insights from them. The key is to find a method that resonates with you and allows you to access the wellspring of your unconscious. Dream work is yet another powerful means for accessing the unconscious mind and unlocking symbolic imagery that can fuel creative expression. But what if you struggle to remember your dreams? Or what if your dreams seem nonsensical and confusing? The good news is that there are simple dream interpretation techniques that can help you decipher the hidden messages of your unconscious. Start by recording your dreams as soon as you wake up, paying attention to the details, emotions, and symbols that stand out to you. Then, try to identify the archetypes that appear in your dreams. Are you being pursued by a shadowy figure, the shadow? Are you being guided by a wise old man, the archetype of the wise old man? Connect these dream images to the Jungian archetypes we've discussed previously, asking yourself what they might represent in your own life. By engaging with your dreams in this way, you can unlock a wealth of creative inspiration and psychological insight. But inner work is only half the equation. Outer practices can also play a crucial role in cultivating mystical perception and creative expression. One such practice is forest bathing, or mindful time spent in nature. What does nature offer that the modern world doesn't? Studies have shown that spending time in nature can reduce stress, lower blood pressure, and boost the immune system. But beyond the scientific benefits, there's a deeper connection to be found in the natural world. Forest bathing involves immersing yourself in the sights, sounds, and smells of the forest, paying attention to the details of your surroundings. This practice can enhance sensory awareness, reduce mental chatter, and create a sense of interconnectedness with all living things. This, in turn, can spark creative inspiration and unlock new perspectives. Recall our prior discussions of the links between mental health and nature. Is it possible that we've become so disconnected from the natural world that we've lost touch with a vital source of inspiration and healing. Engaging in artistic practices, drawing, painting, music, writing, can also serve as a powerful way to channel mystical experiences into tangible forms of expression. How does this manifest? Art allows the unconscious to manifest in creative works. But is it simply about transcribing unconscious experience? Different art forms connect to different mystical archetypes. Painting might connect you to the anima or animus, sculpture to the shadow, and music to the self. These practices can provide catharsis, unlock inspiration, and allow you to communicate the ineffable. The act of creation can be a mystical experience in itself, a way of tapping into the deeper currents of human consciousness. Finally, let's not underestimate the value of play. What state of mind does play encourage? Play encourages a sense of curiosity, exploration, and spontaneity. It allows us to tap into our inner child and to approach the world with a sense of wonder. This, in turn, can lead to innovative ideas and creative breakthroughs. Remember, children often have a unique way of seeing the world, unburdened by the constraints of logic and reason. By embracing play, we can recapture that childlike sense of wonder and unlock our own creative potential. Is play simply a frivolous activity, or is it an essential ingredient for a fulfilling and creative life? Of course, walking this path isn't always easy. As mentioned before, it's easy to backslide into old habits and patterns of thinking. Vigilance is required. This can include the return of psychological instability or the tendency to take things too seriously. The key is to cultivate self-awareness and to recognize when you're starting to stray from the path. All of these tools, mindfulness, journaling, dream work, forest bathing, artistic expression, and play, are interconnected. Improvement in one often leads to improvement in all of them. How can these tools be integrated into a daily routine? By making them a regular part of your life, you can cultivate a consistent practice of mystical perception and creative expression. But we now know how to cultivate creativity through these inspired practices. Is there a cost? How do we maintain balance on the razor's edge? That will be discussed next. So, how do we maintain balance on the razor's edge? Is there a sweet spot between madness and genius, a state of inspired instability that fuels extraordinary creativity? The romanticized image of the tormented artist, teetering on the brink of psychological collapse, has long captivated the cultural imagination. But what does it feel like to inhabit this precarious state? Imagine a mind buzzing with high energy, bombarded by sensory overload, struggling to focus amidst the chaos of racing thoughts. It's a thrilling, yet terrifying, tightrope walk. However, let's challenge the notion that suffering is a prerequisite for creative brilliance. Must we sacrifice psychological well-being to unlock our artistic potential? In contrast to the trope of the tortured artist, many individuals find inspiration in a clear, focused mind. The core question then becomes, how can we unlock our creative potential without succumbing to psychological instability? This section will address that very question. To begin, let's define the key characteristics of this sweet spot. Ego strength is critical and might be defined by healthy personal boundaries and the ability to discern between reality and fantasy. Emotional regulation is another important component and can be thought of as the capacity to experience a full range of emotions without being overwhelmed. Social support is also key, because those who have a strong connection with others, both family and friends, tend to fare better. And lastly, mindful engagement with both the inner and outer worlds means being present in your own life and taking responsibility for your actions. These elements create a foundation for inspired creativity. In contrast, states of imbalance, such as psychosis, addiction, or extreme isolation, can quickly derail the creative process. Where is the line between inspired creativity and psychological distress? It might be found in the warning signs, like neglecting personal responsibilities, harming relationships, or losing touch with reality. What begins as eccentric behavior can easily spiral into something more sinister. Managed intensity becomes a critical skill. The ability to harness heightened sensitivities and channel emotions productively rather than being overwhelmed by them. What does managed intensity look like in practice? Think of it as the ability to turn the volume up and down on one's emotions and sensitivities, rather than being controlled by them. This requires self-awareness, discipline, and a willingness to seek support when needed. Consider the case of Albert Einstein, a man whose thought experiments and unconventional way of thinking revolutionized our understanding of the universe. Was he simply mad? Einstein's ability to visualize complex concepts and challenge existing paradigms was undoubtedly a hallmark of his genius. However, he also cultivated practices to manage the intensity of his intellectual pursuits. He famously enjoyed sailing as a way to unwind and clear his mind, finding solace and balance in the natural world. This suggests that even the most brilliant minds require strategies to maintain equilibrium. Now, let's analyze the life and work of Maya Angelou, a writer, poet, and civil rights activist who overcame immense adversity to become one of the most influential voices of her generation. Was her powerful writing simply the product of suffering? Detail the trauma she experienced. Angelou's early life was marked by trauma, abuse, and racial discrimination. However, she channeled her pain into art, writing powerfully about resilience, empowerment, and the struggle for social justice. Explore the themes of resilience and empowerment in her poetry and prose, and the social structures that supported her. Angelou's commitment to social justice, her emotional intelligence, and her ability to connect with others on a deep level are all evidence of a balanced and integrated personality. In contrast, consider the lives of historical figures who arguably struggled to maintain balance. Friedrich Nietzsche, the brilliant philosopher whose ideas challenged conventional morality, descended into madness in his later years, succumbing to a devastating mental illness. Or Virginia Woolf, whose struggles with depression and mental instability ultimately led to her tragic suicide. What happened in their lives, and what were the warning signs that were present? Nietzsche's increasing isolation, his grandiose pronouncements, and his eventual collapse into catatonia suggest a mind that had lost its moorings. Woolf's recurrent depressive episodes, her intense sensitivities, and her struggles with social interaction all point to a fragility that she was ultimately unable to overcome. While their genius is undeniable, their lives serve as cautionary tales about the importance of psychological well-being. In essence, the sweet spot between madness and genius is not a fixed destination, but a dynamic and ever-evolving process. What does this mean? It requires ongoing self-reflection, a strong support system, and skillful management of one's emotions and sensitivities. Summarize the key takeaways, emphasizing the importance of seeking balance, managing intensity, and celebrating individual differences, then connect to the earlier discussions of ego strength and ethical conduct. This leads us to challenge societal attitudes toward mental illness and creative genius. How can we create a more supportive and understanding environment for those who walk the line between sanity and madness? We must advocate for greater understanding, compassion, and support for individuals with diverse ways of thinking and being. Discuss the importance of destigmatizing mental health challenges and creating a more inclusive and supportive environment for individuals with diverse ways of thinking and being, and advocate for normalizing therapy and other tools. But how can we, as a society, create a more supportive and understanding environment for those who walk the line between sanity and madness, creativity and instability? What kind of frameworks and tools do we need? Foreshadow a discussion of societal values, cultural narratives, and the importance of celebrating both individual expression and collective well-being. What we'll discover next is even more shocking as we explore the societal implications of mystical creativity. Imagine society as a crucible, a vessel designed to refine and strengthen its contents, yet capable of crushing them under immense pressure. What elements within that crucible lead to safety, fostering growth and creativity, and what elements, conversely, lead to instability, crushing individuality and promoting psychological distress? The answer lies, in part, in the values and expectations that a society chooses to uphold. For instance, conformity, often touted as a virtue, isn't always desirable. Rigid adherence to societal expectations can stifle creativity, suppress individuality, and ultimately lead to psychological distress. What does it mean to constantly subdue your authentic self to fit in? Consider the pressures to conform to beauty standards, career paths, or even political ideologies. The fear of being judged, ostracized, or cancelled can force individuals to suppress their true selves, leading to resentment, anxiety, and a deep sense of alienation. What does this mean for non-binary people navigating a world that insists on binary definitions? What does this mean for people of color facing systemic biases and microaggressions? Indeed, different cultures hold vastly different attitudes toward mental illness, creativity, and eccentricity. Contrast, for example, cultures that celebrate visionary thinking and artistic expression, such as the Renaissance-era Italian city-states, with cultures that stigmatize mental illness and prioritize conformity, such as certain highly conservative and authoritarian regimes. In the former, individuals with unconventional ways of being were often celebrated as geniuses, while in the latter, they might be labeled as mad or dangerous, subjected to social isolation or even institutionalization. Where does cancel culture fit on that spectrum, and what are its implications for those who dare to deviate from the norm? But if society can be a destructive crucible, how can individuals cultivate the resilience needed to withstand its pressures? Enter the concept of personal resilience, which acts as a shield against the destructive forces of societal pressure, allowing individuals to maintain their integrity and cultivate their creative potential, even in the face of adversity. Think of it as a fortress of self, built to withstand the constant barrage of external expectations and judgments. But how do we construct this fortress, and what materials do we need? Concrete strategies are critical. Mindfulness meditation, for example, can enhance self-awareness, reduce stress, and cultivate a sense of inner peace, allowing individuals to observe their thoughts and emotions without judgment, creating space between themselves and the external pressures. Self-compassion involves treating oneself with kindness and understanding, especially during times of struggle, fostering emotional resilience, and preventing self-criticism from spiraling out of control. Strong social support networks provide a sense of belonging, validation, and encouragement, reminding individuals that they are not alone in their struggles. And purpose-driven action, aligning one's actions with one's values and making a positive contribution to the world, can provide a sense of meaning and purpose that transcends the pressures of conformity. These should be a practiced, intentional strategy. The casual application of one or two of these in times of crisis will likely not suffice. What does intentional application look like? However, even the most resilient individuals are not immune to the insidious effects of societal pressures. Societal pressures and cultural expectations can amplify the shadow aspects of the personality, leading to psychological distress and hindering creative expression. The shadow is not just an internal phenomenon. It is also a product of external influences. What kind of pressures and expectations lead to that inner turmoil? Consider the societal norms around perfectionism, productivity, and success. These norms can foster self-criticism, anxiety, and a fear of failure, leading individuals to suppress their true selves and conform to unrealistic expectations. How do the pressures of social media make that worse, as individuals curate idealized versions of themselves and compare themselves to others? The constant barrage of curated perfection can amplify feelings of inadequacy and self-doubt, making it more difficult to embrace one's authentic self. Furthermore, societal biases and prejudices can marginalize and stigmatize individuals with unconventional ways of thinking or being, leading to feelings of isolation, shame, and self-doubt, amplifying the shadow and making it more difficult to integrate. Discuss the ways in which individuals are treated differently based on factors such as race, gender, sexual orientation, or mental health status. Can we rise above this? Can society ever truly accept and celebrate difference, or are we forever destined to repeat cycles of prejudice and discrimination? In essence, societal and cultural influences play a significant role in shaping the lives of individuals who walk the line between inspired instability and psychological well-being. Personal resilience is critical, and societal change is equally imperative. Connect the dots between conformity, personal resilience, shadow integration, and societal responsibility, highlighting the interconnectedness of these concepts. What is the value of living an authentic life, even in the face of societal disapproval? Ultimately, self-compassion is the foundation that connects them all. Both for individuals struggling with mental health challenges and for those seeking to cultivate their creative potential, self-compassion is a revolutionary act of self-acceptance and a powerful tool for breaking free from societal pressures. How does treating oneself with kindness and understanding foster emotional resilience, reduce self-criticism, and create space for personal growth and creative expression? By cultivating personal resilience, challenging societal pressures, and embracing self-compassion, we can create a world where all individuals have the opportunity to thrive, express their unique gifts, and live a life of inspired stability. But what are the specific steps we can take to create this more compassionate and supportive world? In our concluding section, we'll offer a final call to action, inviting you to join us in creating this more compassionate and supportive world. We've discussed personal resilience and the influence of society, but what if psychological well-being and mystical insight weren't just about surviving the crucible, but about transforming it? What if the very pressures and experiences that seem to break us down are actually the raw materials for something extraordinary? This brings us to the concept of psychological alchemy, a Jungian framework for understanding the transformative potential of mystical experiences. But is psychological alchemy merely a system of classification, a way of labeling lead and gold within the psyche? Or is it a true process of transmutation, capable of actually changing lead into gold? Psychological alchemy, at its core, reframes the ancient alchemical quest not as a literal pursuit of transmuting base metals, but as a symbolic journey of inner transformation. Mystical experiences, in this context, become potent catalysts for this alchemical process, igniting the fires of transformation and revealing the hidden potential within the individual psyche. Each stage of alchemy offers a parallel to the individuation process. Negrido, the blackening, corresponds to confronting the shadow, acknowledging the darkest aspects of ourselves. Albedo, the whitening, mirrors the integration of the anima or animus, the contrasexual aspects of the personality. Rubedo, the reddening, represents self-realization, the culmination of the individuation process, where the individual achieves wholeness and integration. Is it possible that these aren't merely symbolic parallels, but descriptions of the same underlying process, viewed through different lenses? The alchemical process, however, is not a passive one. It requires active engagement, intention, and a willingness to confront the shadow, embrace the unknown, and surrender to the transformative power of the unconscious. This brings us to the principles and practices of psychological alchemy, best understood through the symbolism of the Emerald Tablet, a foundational text of alchemy. The tablet speaks of solve et coagula, dissolve and coagulate, a mantra for the entire alchemical process. But how does this dissolve and coagulate apply to the concepts we've already discussed, such as societal pressures and personal resilience? Solve et coagula suggests the necessity of breaking down old, rigid patterns of thought, feeling, and behavior the dissolving, to create space for new, more authentic, and integrated ways of being the coagulating. Active imagination becomes an essential tool in this process, allowing individuals to actively and consciously engage with the symbols, dreams, and shadow aspects that emerge from the unconscious. But how does one actively and consciously choose to reinterpret the meaning of a symbol, particularly one that evokes strong emotions or triggers deeply ingrained patterns? The key lies in recognizing that symbols are not fixed or literal representations, but rather dynamic and multifaceted expressions of the unconscious. One must actively engage in questioning, exploring, and recontextualizing the symbol, allowing its meaning to evolve and deepen. What does it mean to turn tragedy into triumph, or to find the gold hidden within the darkness? Is it a naive denial of reality, or the key to unlocking our true potential? Not everyone who attempts this alchemical transformation succeeds. What distinguishes those who achieve genuine self-knowledge and transformation from those who remain stuck in old patterns or succumb to delusion? Obstacles range from intellectual rigidity, emotional resistance, and a lack of self-awareness, to an unwillingness to confront the shadow or surrender to the transformative power of the unconscious. To overcome these obstacles requires courage, humility, perseverance, and a willingness to embrace the unknown. But beyond simply embracing the unknown, what specific practices and strategies can individuals employ to navigate the often turbulent waters of psychological alchemy? Consider Carl Jung's own journey, meticulously documented in the Red Book, which stands as a powerful and deeply personal example of psychological alchemy in action. Jung, grappling with profound psychological instability, used his own experience as a crucible, forging his theories and transforming not only his own life, but the lives of countless others. His confrontation with the unconscious, a descent into the depths of his own psyche, led to the emergence of symbolic figures and archetypal themes that would shape his entire body of work. But what does Jung's intensely personal journey mean for the viewers of this video? How can we apply his methods of active imagination and symbolic interpretation to our own lives? To make this more concrete, consider a modern example. Sarah, a successful businesswoman who experienced a profound mystical experience during a period of intense stress and burnout. Initially, Sarah dismissed the experience as a hallucination, a product of exhaustion and overwork. However, after encountering Jungian psychology, she began to explore the symbolic meaning of her experience. Sarah began actively journaling and meditating on the images and emotions that had arisen during her mystical episode. Through this process, she realized that the experience was a call to re-evaluate her priorities, reconnect with her creative passions, and cultivate a more balanced and authentic way of life. Did this lead to an artistic breakthrough? Did she change her career or her relationship patterns? In fact, Sarah eventually left her corporate job to start a non-profit organization focused on promoting mindfulness and creativity in the workplace, a direct application of the processes we've discussed. Ultimately, through actively engaging with their inner worlds, confronting their shadows, and reinterpreting the meaning of their experiences, individuals can achieve profound self-knowledge and transformation. The power of choice and intention, combined with the insights gained from mystical experiences, can unlock untapped potential and lead to a more authentic and fulfilling life. Now that we see how this process transforms individuals, let's zoom out and ask how society itself can be transformed. What is the future of these practices, and how can they contribute to a more compassionate and enlightened world? We've seen how psychological alchemy can transform individuals, but can these personal transformations truly create a ripple effect, extending beyond the individual to reshape the very fabric of society? If a person becomes more empathetic, how does that change their interactions not just at home, but also at work? Does that newfound empathy influence their voting habits, the causes they support, or even the products they choose to buy? Can this personal alchemy contribute to positive societal change, fostering a more just, compassionate, and sustainable world? Or does it simply amplify existing societal trends, for better or for worse, like pouring gasoline on a fire, regardless of whether that fire is destructive or creative? Does alchemy just make a person more of themselves, for better or worse? And what role does the collective unconscious play in shaping societal structures, subtly influencing our values, narratives, and actions? To understand this potential societal impact, we must consider the concept of collective shadow work, an extension of the Jungian concept of shadow integration applied to the societal level. Just as individuals suppress or deny certain aspects of their personal identity, so too do societies suppress or deny certain aspects of their collective identity. These suppressed aspects, often manifesting as prejudices, inequalities, and destructive behaviors, form the collective shadow of a society. Our contemporary phenomena like cancel culture and virtue signaling, perhaps examples of failed collective shadow work, attempts to suppress dissenting opinions or project an idealized image onto the world, rather than genuinely integrating uncomfortable truths. How do societal structures, from political systems to economic models, inadvertently reinforce negative patterns and perpetuate the cycle of shadow projection? What about economic and financial patterns, such as the boom and bust cycle, which might be seen as a manifestation of the collective's inability to manage its darker impulses? If individual psychological alchemy can indeed influence society, what are the key societal levers through which this influence operates? 3 such levers stand out: values, narratives, and collective action. Alchemically transformed individuals, having confronted their own shadows and integrated their inner opposites, can advocate for more compassionate, inclusive, and sustainable values within their communities. But what does this advocacy look like in practice? Does it always translate to progressive values, or do traditionally conservative values, such as a focus on community, personal responsibility, and respect for tradition, also have a role to play in a balanced and alchemically informed society? Perhaps the true alchemical transformation lies not in blindly adopting a particular set of values, but in embracing the underlying principles of empathy, compassion, and justice, regardless of their political or ideological label. Beyond values, transformed individuals can challenge dominant cultural narratives that perpetuate harmful stereotypes, prejudices, and inequalities, contributing to more nuanced and equitable stories. How can a deeper understanding of archetypes, for example, help us to deconstruct these narratives, revealing their underlying psychological structures and exposing their potential for manipulation? Consider how archetypes are used in advertising and propaganda to tap into our unconscious desires and fears. Can a greater awareness of these archetypal patterns empower us to resist these manipulative forces and construct more authentic and empowering narratives? And how can we ensure that these new narratives don't simply become new forms of propaganda, perpetuating different but equally harmful stereotypes and prejudices? Furthermore, transformed individuals can inspire collective action, joining with others to address social and environmental challenges. But how can this understanding shift from personal action to effective group dynamics and movements, for better or worse? How can these insights change the very nature of group dynamics, fostering collaboration, empathy, and shared responsibility, rather than division, conflict, and groupthink? Consider the difference between a movement driven by genuine compassion and a movement driven by resentment and a desire for revenge. Can psychological alchemy help us to distinguish between these 2 types of movements and to guide our actions accordingly? But what is the precise relationship between inner and outer transformation? Can one truly happen without the other? Is it possible to create a just and compassionate society without first addressing the psychological wounds and shadow aspects of its individual members? Or, conversely, Can individuals achieve genuine self-realization in a society that is fundamentally unjust and oppressive? Moreover, how can individuals avoid the trap of virtue signaling, where they appear to be acting virtuously but are not genuinely committed to change? Can someone effectively trick themselves into becoming a better person through consistent, conscious action, even if their initial motivations are less than pure? And what is the long-term effect of faking it until you make it on the alchemical transformation, both for the individual and for the society as a whole? Furthermore, how can societal pressure, often exerted through social media, political polarization, and economic inequality, make personal transformation even more difficult? Connect this back to the earlier discussions of group dynamics. Are some individuals better off striking out alone, pursuing their alchemical journey in solitude, rather than attempting to navigate the often toxic landscape of societal discourse? Or is it through engaging with these challenges, confronting the shadows of society, that true transformation becomes possible? To see these principles in action, consider the example of the civil rights movement in the United States, a powerful example of an alchemical transformation of societal values and narratives. Analyze the leaders of the movement, such as Martin Luther King Jr., and their remarkable ability to inspire collective action through their compelling vision of equality and justice. How did the integration of the shadow, the recognition and acknowledgement of the deep-seated racism within American society ultimately change and reshape the nation's laws, institutions, and cultural norms? Did this movement, too, have a shadow side, a legacy of unintended consequences and unresolved conflicts? Beyond this historical example, what modern examples exist of alchemically transformed communities or movements that have had a demonstrable impact on societal values and narratives? Consider the impact of environmental activism on raising awareness about climate change and promoting sustainable practices. What about the permaculture movement, which seeks to create sustainable and regenerative human settlements by mimicking natural ecosystems? These movements, while undoubtedly positive in many respects, also have their critics and potential downsides. Did the leaders of the civil rights movement, for example, possess shadow traits that, once integrated, ultimately made society better? What about negative movements that cloak themselves in virtuous rhetoric, pursuing destructive agendas under the guise of doing good? This raises a crucial question. Can alchemy, in fact, have a negative effect on society? Is it possible for a society to become alchemically transformed in a way that leads to oppression, injustice, or even self-destruction? What does a society that has widely adopted psychological alchemy even look like? What are the potential benefits and drawbacks of such a society? How will technology, with its ability to amplify both positive and negative trends, factor into this alchemical equation? Synthesizing the information presented, it becomes clear that psychological alchemy has the potential to transform both individuals and societies, but that its ultimate impact depends on conscious choices, ethical conduct, and an unwavering commitment to collective well-being. What, then, does it truly mean to live an alchemically inspired life, not just as an individual, but as a member of a larger community? What does a good alchemist do, not just to transform themselves, but to contribute to the betterment of the world around them? As we approach our conclusion, we must confront the long-term implications of psychological alchemy for the future of humanity. What kind of world can we create if we commit to transforming ourselves and our societies in alignment with our highest values? What if, as some have suggested, alchemy is not merely an esoteric practice or a psychological framework, but a societal imperative, a crucial step in the evolution of human consciousness? The future of psychological alchemy, and perhaps the future of humanity itself, depends on our willingness to embrace the journey, integrate our shadows, and work together to create a more just, compassionate, and sustainable world. We'll explore this vision of the future and the practical steps we can take to bring it into being in our concluding section. As we draw these threads together, it becomes clear that the psychology of mystical perception is a vast and intricate tapestry, woven with threads of personal experience, cultural narratives, and universal archetypes. This exploration has only scratched the surface, of course, as the depths of the human psyche are as boundless as the cosmos itself. But hopefully, what we have explored provides a helpful framework for understanding seemingly ineffable phenomena. Let's briefly revisit some of the key ideas we've discussed. We've seen how mystical perception, rather than being solely a matter of supernatural occurrences, can be understood as a psychological phenomenon, a particular state of consciousness shaped by the dynamics of the unconscious mind. We've explored the crucial role of Jungian archetypes, those universal patterns of behavior and imagery residing in the collective unconscious, in shaping the symbols, motifs, and narratives that arise in mystical experiences. These archetypes, like the wise old man, the anima animus, and the shadow, provide a symbolic language through which the unconscious communicates with the conscious mind, offering guidance, insight, and opportunities for integration. We also emphasize the importance of integrating the shadow, the disowned and repressed aspects of our personality, as a crucial step towards wholeness and individuation. Furthermore, we've touched upon the potential benefits and risks of altered states of consciousness, emphasizing the need for a balanced and grounded approach when exploring these realms. Finally, we reiterated the vital importance of grounding psychological insight in ethical considerations, ensuring that our mystical experiences contribute to a more compassionate, just, and sustainable world. It is important to remember that all of these processes are not static, but ever-evolving and constantly in flux. At the outset of this exploration, we asked fundamental questions about the nature of reality, the limitations of ordinary perception, and the potential for seeing beyond the veil. While we have not provided definitive answers to these age-old questions, and perhaps no such answers exist, we have offered a framework for understanding mystical experiences as a potential means of expanding our perceptions and deepening our connection to the symbolic dimensions of reality. It's important to reiterate that seeing beyond the veil should be understood not as a literal act of supernatural sight, but as an enhanced form of intuition, a heightened sensitivity to symbolic meaning, and a deeper appreciation for the interconnectedness of all things. Remember that as enhanced as intuition can be, one should always temper expectations with skeptical analysis. Ultimately, the psychology of mystical perception underscores the importance of psychological responsibility in interpreting and integrating these experiences. Mystical insights, no matter how profound or transformative they may seem, should be grounded in ethical considerations and contribute to the betterment of the world. This is not to say that mystical experiences should be approached with skepticism or dismissed as mere illusions, but rather that they should be carefully examined, thoughtfully interpreted, and integrated into a coherent and ethical worldview. Perhaps the most important thing to remember is this paradox. The more deeply we explore the inner world, the more skillfully we must navigate the outer world. A life well lived relies on a combination of inspiration and action. Remember that, even as one engages with mystical imagery, one should continue to be skeptical and analytical. As we conclude this exploration, I invite you to continue exploring your own inner world, cultivating your capacity for mystical perception in a safe, balanced, and ethical way. Consider incorporating practices such as journaling, meditation, or creative expression into your daily routine, as these can provide valuable tools for accessing and integrating unconscious material. If you feel called to do so, seek guidance from a qualified therapist or spiritual advisor who can help you navigate the complexities of your inner landscape. I urge you to explore the many texts and videos mentioned here that can further inform your understanding. Most importantly, integrate these insights into your daily life, using them to make more conscious, compassionate, and responsible choices. Thank you for joining me on this exploration into the psychology of mystical perception.